to commission discussion. The commission discussion will consist of and/or make comments on the presentation and the documentation that staff has prepared for us and that we've been looking at for the last while. Actually, I want to make one other thing clear. The meeting will start. The first thing we'll do is review and approve the minutes from one of the preceding meetings. So without any further ado,
As a public hearing this
yes.
evening, for a recommendation to the council, there would be rebuttal as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the final thing that we will do is go through what we call a green sheet, which is a series of approvals or comments or determinations of non-applicability of the item in question. And then if all goes as it normally does, we will vote on the recommendation that staff prepare findings of fact that will be forwarded to the city. Okay? So with that, we will start with the presentations. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I keep forgetting the minutes. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes that were forwarded to us? And if so, does anybody have any changes, clarifications that they wish to make at this point? I have none.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes for the, what meeting was it, by the way?
7th.
The May 7th meeting of the Development Commission, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you.
So this evening, you're going to have a presentation by Amy Tarson. I just want to introduce her to you. She is our brand new senior planner, and we are putting her through a trial by fire with the first permit. She just started December 1st. She came to us from Washington, D.C., where she was on the National Capital Planning Commission. She was there about 6 years, and before that, she was at the city of Redmond for many years. So she's operated on both coasts and has a master's in planning and a master's in architecture. So I hand it over to Amy.
Thank you, Lucy. So good evening, everyone. I guess we're off to a good start. I got my red envelope before Chinese New Year, so that's a lucky thing. So I'd like to start off by, again, reminding everyone that this project is being reviewed as a master site plan and a site development permit. And your role tonight is to evaluate the project and to provide recommendations to the City Council. So I'd like to start off with an overview. Basically, in the staff report, you will notice that there are several criteria for a master site plan and site development permit. And several of those items have really no specific issues. And these three bullets basically summarize the three items that staff has evaluated. And I'm not going to go through this in my presentation only because we've either addressed them through minor conditions or at the level of review that we're doing at this point, they do provide compliance to the master site plan and site development permit. And just for a quick summary, that includes the on-site utilities, which includes an on-site infiltration for stormwater using low-impact development and undergrounding of existing power lines and relocation of transmission lines that are in their property. We're also not going to talk about the usable open space. I will point them out very briefly, but we didn't really have any issues with them. And the phasing will be addressed during the site work permit. However, for tonight's presentation, I have asked the the applicant and their consultants to talk more about the phasing, because I'm sure, including the public comments that we've received, there were some questions about them. So we're anticipating that you might have some questions about them, and we have the applicant here tonight to answer those questions. So after my presentation, we will have David Mount with Malon to basically represent the applicant and provide us with more details on the architecture, the site plan, the landscape, and any other issues that you might want to hear about. So for tonight, my presentation will cover 4 general topics: compatibility with adjacent uses, and design harmony is in the design checklist. Transition areas were also discussed, and the screening of accessory structures and uses were items that were covered in different aspects of either the site development permit, the IMC, or the design standards. Vehicular traffic impacts includes streets and sidewalk improvements and additional mitigation, and I'm going to talk about that later. Non-motorized transportation access and connections will include a discussion of both off-site and on-site improvements, as well as the bike and pedestrian connections. And lastly, the critical areas and associated buffers. Granted, we don't really have any concerns about them, but also to respond to some of the public comments, I'm going to provide a short presentation on that too. So I'm sure you're all familiar where the school is. This just shows that, for the record, it is in the Old Town sub area of the comprehensive plan. And the aerial photo on the right shows what's existing there today. You have the Tiger Mountain High School and Clark Elementary School on the northern half of the site, and then you have the Issaquah High School to the south, and also an existing school bus yard. So the proposed building location is to be located right where the existing parking and a vacant lot is. Basically, the idea is that for the Tiger Mountain High School and the Clark Elementary School to continue to operate while the new school is being built. The proposal will impact about 32 acres of the total 63 acres of school district property. And it includes 131,000 square feet of building square footage, and a courtyard, outdoor classrooms, and a forecourt for the main entrance, and also a patio for the faculty. So these are the usable open spaces that are proposed for this project. In addition to that, we have 2 play fields, one a softball field, and then basically a combined track and football and soccer field. And the accessory parking is basically proposed to be included as part of this development, and that includes parking for faculty, starting from the top right. I'm just going down. You have a visitor parent parking area with a drop-off, and a school bus parking on the west side of 2nd Avenue Southeast. In addition to that, this proposal includes a combined high school and middle school bus drop-off. So this is what the site looks like today, looking north from the interior of the lot. And this is what it looks like looking south from from Evans Street. So recalling what you just saw, the illustration on the top is basically what you're going to see on where you're looking from the interior of the site, and the illustration on the bottom is what you'll see from from Evans Street. And the bottom illustration actually shows what the courtyard will look like, flanked by the 2 wings of the building, and I'll talk more about the building in a minute, and also with a covered walkway. The north the top illustration shows the main entrance with the gym on the left and the library and administration building on the right, which is the lower wing. In addition to those two faces of the building, which are the most public side of the building, there's also this facade, which is facing 2nd Avenue Southeast. However, this is set back significantly from the street, so you won't be able to see this. However, it's right next to the multipurpose sport field. So this is showing the classroom wing on which is the taller part of the building. So staff has evaluated this project and concludes that the proposal is consistent with the land use and zoning designation. So I'm not going to go through these in detail, just to basically show that we've done our evaluation. In addition to that, we also look at the development standards, and again, these are all in your staff reports, and it basically complies to the standards. The one thing that we did note is that the school building exceeds the allowable height limit for single-family suburban, which is the zoning district that we based our development standards on. However, we do have a provision in the IMC that allows for the expansion of a non-conforming condition. So in this particular case, the reason why we can use this provision is because the high school was also a non-conforming condition. So by building this new school building, it actually expands the non-conforming condition that's already there. Transportation impacts and mitigation. There are several major elements to this. I'm going to talk about the street improvements on 2nd Avenue Southeast and Southeast Evans, and the bike and pedestrian facilities. They are also eventually going to finalize a transportation management plan, and currently staff is working with the applicant to identify additional mitigation for their traffic impact. And this is going to be part of the SEPA review. And just for clarification, while normally we are the lead agency for SEPA review, for this particular project, the school district is the lead agency. Transportation impacts that we are currently reviewing and continue to work with them on pertains to basically updating their traffic impact information for 4 locations. So that's 2nd Avenue and Sunset, the school signalized intersection at 2nd Avenue Southeast, Front Street and Southeast Clark, and Front Street and Sunset Way. To address the current development of additional mitigation, we are including a recommended condition as part of this approval, which states that the school district shall work with the city once the updated traffic study is completed to define the appropriate proportionate traffic improvements necessary to mitigate the operational and safety impacts at the intersections identified in the updated traffic study. Final mitigation measures shall be determined prior to issuance of building permits. So now I'm going to talk about streets and sidewalks. First, I'm going to cover both Evans and 2nd Avenue Southeast. This diagram just shows that the right-of-way for Southeast Evans actually stops right at the edge of the what is currently the parking lot. So this just shows a quick overview. I'm not sure if you can discern the difference between the gray areas and the white. Sometimes the screen has a very different effect on graphics. But basically, I'm going to go over in greater detail what's going on for 2nd Avenue. I just wanted to show, where all these improvements are. So starting with the 2nd Avenue improvements, this is just a view of the intersection of Second and Evans. And the graphic on the right shows, how, where the person is standing when this picture was taken. So here are additional views of Second Avenue, and notice the difference in the frontage improvements. The top photo is actually the frontage along what will be the future middle school, and then obviously the lower photo, you're probably familiar with that, is the frontage along the high school. So when the middle school gets developed, we will see something in between the bottom and the top photo, and I'm going to talk about that. So as a summary, these are the highlights of the major improvements for Second Avenue. We're going to have a new 10-foot bike pedestrian shared use route with a 5-foot street tree planter. So Second Avenue will include street trees and street lighting. So this is a little different than the frontage on the high school, because the high school doesn't have a 10-foot wide bike pedestrian route. We're also going to get new curb ramps at the bus yard, because they're moving their access drive further north. We're getting new crosswalks and curb ramps at the intersection of Evans and Second Avenue, and a new connection to the existing trail near the skate park. And so now I'm going to talk about before I talk about Second Avenue. So one of the elements of the Second Avenue improvements that we are conditioning is the existence of new retaining walls. I may not have been here in the previous meetings, but I did get a chance to review some of the comments, and it seems like the retaining wall was one of the issues that was brought up by the commission. We are requiring actually two related conditions in the staff report. One that talks about just retaining walls, and that includes 3 potential ways of mitigating those retaining walls. And the other has to do with retaining walls with fences, which is similar to the one that's on Second Avenue Southeast. And and again, for mitigation, it's addressing the effect of tall walls on public streets. And for that, we have identified potential solutions, such as incorporating artwork into the wall, installing a trellis and planted with vines, and providing a message board or other creative treatment. Now, the message board is not appropriate for the public streets, but all throughout the site, there's actually several 13-foot high retaining walls. So those may be more appropriate places for other types of mitigation that also appeals to the students in the campus. Existing conditions on Southeast Evans. The photo D shows the view looking towards Second Avenue Southeast, and photo E shows the view looking towards the access drive to the Issaquah Sportsman's Club. The photo E, if you would take a moment, you'll notice how the road actually narrows significantly from the foreground to the background. And this I'll talk about a little bit when you see the proposal. So this one shows additional photos, this time of the backyards of the residential area just north of Evans. Again, this is one of the concerns from previous meetings regarding the impacts of future buses and vehicles coming in on Evans. So this is what is currently the condition of the backyards. And as you go further east, which is G, you'll notice how the houses start setting back a little bit further, and also how there are additional trees that buffer the houses from the road. So for Southeast Evans, they are proposing 6-foot wide sidewalks and ramps for where you have the driveway entrances, 5-foot planters with street trees, curb and gutters, and street lighting. I encircled this area because this is the same area that you saw earlier in the photo, where this is how they're transitioning the difference in the width of the street. So they're not necessarily widening Evans as you go further east, but they're providing additional landscape buffer for what will be part of a future parking lot adjacent or I shouldn't say, across the street from Evans and looking at the backyards of the residential area. Existing conditions, Rainier Trail is one of the off-site amenities, but that is definitely a great amenity adjacent to the school. So the diagram on the right shows two treatment of Rainier Trail. The solid line shows where the trail is actually a paved 10-foot wide facility. And then where you see the dashed lines, they are more reflective of what you see in letter H and letter I. So these are natural, almost informal sort of trails. So here you see, we're showing additional views of that trail. On the east side of the trail, we see a variation again on the treatment. K shows you a more paved, definitely flat area that is wheelchair accessible. And then the trail actually, and unfortunately what this shows you really is more of the difference in the grade on the site and how that grade change in so many ways predicates where the trail end up. So, so this is fresh information for us, and this is actually provided to you as additional information today. It's one of the exhibits that we have included in your chair. This shows what the applicant is proposing as a relocated for the relocation of the existing trail that's going through their site. Basically, it shows an alignment that runs along Southeast Evans, or what is really an access drive, and then comes around, and let me see if I can point to it. So comes around and then goes south on one side of, again, the access drive to get to the Sportsman's Club. They are also proposing, so what they're proposing is a 6-foot wide gravel path and 2 gravel parking spaces at what would be the start of the informal trail that I showed earlier. So staff has 2 concerns about this proposal. One has to do with where they're proposing the crossing for the trail on the access drive. This area is where most of the buses will come in, and where faculty vehicles will come in. So this could potentially be an unsafe area for pedestrian crossing. And then the other thing we noted is how the 5-foot wide gravel trail is not an equivalent replacement for the existing paved trail inside the school district property. So here's a view of what the access drive looks like. So even though it says no parking, you have a lot of basically high school kids parking on the street or on the driveway on both sides of the area. And there are no sidewalks, there are no curbs. These edges are not developed. So what staff is proposing as an alternative is maybe moving the crossing further north or further northeast where there's less opportunities for conflicts with like a high traffic volume. So based on that, we also would like to see the trail move to the north side instead of the south side. And that currently, and we'd like to make a note of this, that the city street standards for paved trails is a minimum of 12 feet. Now, we're not going to ask for 12 feet. We're willing to basically consider a 6-foot wide gravel path. And so these are basically what we are proposing as conditions for the trail. The D7 is actually a condition for another trail on the west side of the west leg of Rainier. And I'm sorry I didn't have a graphic for that, but it's in the staff report. And again, we don't have any issues with that. And so hopefully, if you'd like me to show you where that is, I can do that later. But the other condition, D9, is actually, originally we had a different condition that we would like to revise based on the new information we received today. And basically acknowledges that we do need to work with the applicant on the final alignment for this trail, but also in terms of timing, when we would like this to be approved. And it also considers how the trail crosses the access road. I'm not going to read. It's a long condition, but hopefully you have it in your motion sheet, word for word. So hopefully that's sufficient for tonight's meeting. So site elements included in the master site plan that will not be constructed at this time. There are 2 items that were mentioned and that I didn't mention also in the staff report. One has to do with the portable classrooms that will eventually be located between the play fields and the classroom wing. And then the other had to do with basically, let's see, the parking area that's shown in some plans and not shown on other plans right now. But eventually, it's the area that they'd like to, currently it's all trees, that they'd like to eventually develop into a parking lot. The applicant hasn't given us any timeline, so for now, we are addressing them by providing 2 conditions to make sure that when they come in for permits that we have certain guidelines on what we're expecting. So internal circulation, what you're seeing here is a very colorful and complicated diagram that is basically a product of several meetings with the applicant. I'm not going to go through in detail each of these colors. What this shows you is precisely why we need a diagram like this, because there are multiple modes of transportation using the same passages and the same roads, and we wanted to make sure that there are no potential impacts, not only on the site but also off-site on 2nd Avenue and Evans. The applicant is here to definitely answer any of your questions regarding the internal circulation, because this is really part of their operations, and it behooves them to make sure that the whole site, both for the high school and the middle school, works for all the students and the parents and the faculty. So I'm using this as a diagram to show basically the relationship between the pedestrian circulation and bike circulation, as well as the vehicular circulation. So I'd like to just highlight basically the green that you see here that goes around and connects back to 2nd Avenue Southeast. That's basically the pedestrian and bike circulation for the middle school. The purple also shows you the pedestrian circulation for the high school. So as you can see, the high school kids, I guess because they're older, you can allow them to walk all the way. And this is the parking lot that I mentioned earlier. That isn't part of this project, but might eventually be built. And so, so here is where you find the busiest area. This orange is where you see the combined bus loop or bus drop-off. And you see two colors. One is a purple and one is a green line that's crossing this. And what it's really representing are the high school and the middle school students that will be accessing the bus drop-off, bus pickup area every day on this route. So staff was very concerned about how these crossings are being treated. Currently, the applicant proposes striping and basically relying on the kids to be able to discern that those are the crosswalks. We think that there is a better solution, or at least a safer solution, and so we have recommended a condition that requires the applicant to provide an alternative material, either concrete, use a pattern, or a speed table, and to use truncated domes as part of the treatment for these 4 crosswalks that's identified here. So now I'd like to talk about design harmony and compatibility. And this has to do with recognizing that a community facility like a school in a predominantly residential neighborhood could have either impacts on the character of the neighborhood, and particularly where the edges of the school building abuts the residential area. So this is just again a simplified diagram that shows, there are 5 different criteria for design harmony that's identified in the design standards. So the first one, building height. I mentioned earlier that this building exceeds the height limit for the area and the zoning district. However, when you look at how the building is sited and you see how far it's set back from the streets, this helps mitigate for the scale of the building. And obviously, we also have several landscape buffers here that also helps and contributes to mitigating the height effect. The other issue has to do with noise. And I indicated here, generally, where the gun club noise, the Issaquah Sportsman's Club has a firing range, and the noise is coming from this side. And the best mitigation really for this building is, once you look at the floor plan, you'll see that this is the classroom wing, and this is where you have more of the enclosed spaces. You have the band room, you have, again, the cafeteria, which can tolerate a lot more noise. So in so many ways, this building shields the classroom wing from the noise that's coming from the east. So another aspect of design harmony has to do with blank walls. These are the elevation drawings for the building, and I have 2 different categories of circles here. I've identified where, so blank walls exist on every elevation of this building. However, there's a difference between the blank walls that are very visible to the public, because of, so the first one is the main entrance. So you have the gym, and then you also have this side, which is the one that, the side that's facing the sports field, again, a very highly traffic, a high traffic area. And then this elevation is the elevation that faces 2nd Avenue. I'm sorry, that faces Evans Street, and right across the street from the neighborhood, from the residential neighborhood. The yellow dashed lines basically acknowledges that these are blank walls. However, special conditions exist that make us feel that this is not as big of an issue as the ones that are circled in red. For instance, this is the loading dock. So we don't really want to attract any more attention to the loading dock, and there won't be any pedestrians in this area. So it's really not a good idea to mitigate that area. Over here, again, this is the loading dock. There's a low wall here. This is facing basically the wooded area, and so it's less of a concern, as well as this side. This is a blank wall right next to the entrance to the faculty lounge, and in a big scheme of things, this area has a parking lot here, and there could be mitigation for this area, and I've also included them in the report. However, for tonight's presentation, I want to focus on the red circles. Okay, sorry. Oops, how do I go back? So the first one I wanted to address is this, is the classroom wing. This is the side that's facing Evans. I've talked to the architect about designing this so that it could potentially, if the walls were just shifted a little bit, it would create a better proportion for the short wall and the long wall. And again, it's something that is not as big of an issue, and something that I'm not going to illustrate here, but it would basically follow more of the same concept here, where you have a skinnier wall and then a wall that's maybe twice as wide of it as part of the design vocabulary for the building. So the two other areas, this one is the main entrance, right? And this is the gym. We are recommending that the applicant provide a covered walkway, similar to what they're proposing for the courtyard. This will serve two purposes. It would provide weather covering for the this is the main parent drop-off, visitor drop-off area. So there's actually parallel parking provided here. And at the same time, it will mitigate the blank wall effect. This photo on the left shows how that works, because you have a horizontal element. It breaks the line of sight and creates a more intimate space, whereas if people were just walking along this wall, it will feel more overwhelming. So the other elevation shows the two blank walls in the covered basketball court. And we are recommending one of several potential ways of treating it. You could either incorporate some more sculptural or art element, or even something as simple as the school logo, and or a seat wall with planters. So the two other elements on design harmony that I'm not going to talk about because they do comply has to do with building modulation. As you can see from these two axonometric drawings, the whole building is pretty well modulated. And in terms of architectural style, they are very similar to the high school. These are photos of the high school. They're using the same color palette, the same materials, except the middle school will not have these wood laminate panels. And it also has almost the same rectilinear modernistic style to it. So as part of the land use compatibility, again, there are several elements in the IMC that helps address these transition areas. This diagram, this is the landscape plan that simply, I just wanted to show how they are proposing to provide the appropriate types of buffers along 2nd Avenue Southeast and along Southeast Evans to mitigate for the parking lots and the different types of uses that they're proposing along the public streets. And one of the other items that we did look at are the fences that are proposed for this whole site. There are actually a lot of fences, and most of them are meant to basically manage the different components of the site. And one area that we are most concerned with is along, again, this is Evans, and this is the main entrance for the buses and the faculty. They are proposing a cyclone fence that runs from the baseball or the softball field and then jogs down and connects to the courtyard. So what we're recommending is that per the IMC, there are several ways to mitigate these fences. And one is to provide a hedge to allow the chain link fence to fade and be integrated into the landscaping. So now I wanted to just quickly talk about the critical areas. We have wetlands and steep slopes, primarily along the bus barn. And so these views show examples of the wetland, and basically these photos were taken along the Rainier Trail. And I don't know if this is clear to you, but this is actually a steep slope that goes up this way. So one of the things we requested from the applicant is verification that this area here, where I just showed you a picture, are actually not man-made steep slopes. The IMC allows for an exemption to steep slopes if they are man-made, and if they don't exceed a certain height and a certain angle. So in your additional packet tonight, again, is a letter from their geotech engineer confirming that these are actually created when the railroad tracks was installed along the side of outside of their property. So actually, this is now obsolete given the new information we got, so we can ignore that. So in conclusion, in addition to meeting the requirements of the master site plan and site development permit, the proposed Issaquah Middle School project complies with the community facility standards in IMC 18.07.480, subject to the proposed conditions of approval provided in the staff report. And based on the submitted application and plans, staff recommends that the Development Commission move to recommend to the City Council approval of the master site plan and the site development permit for the Issaquah Middle School applications, master site plan MSP 14-00002 and site development permit SDP 14-00001. Exhibits 1 through 7, now it would have to be 1 through 13, and the conditions of approval provided in the staff report and at tonight's public hearing. And to direct the Development Services Department to prepare findings of fact and conclusions for review and approval by the Development Commission Chairman, affirming the Development Commission's decision to recommend approval of the Issaquah Middle School project, file numbers MSP 14-00002 and SDP 14-00001, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated February 18, 2015, and project drawings received on February 11, 2015, and subject to the conditions therein, and as amended tonight. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Okay. And now I'd like to invite David Mount to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Issaquah School District.
I just didn't know if it was a contractor on behalf of or how that works.
No, just the school district, and this evening I'm representing them, and I will introduce the team that is here.
If there's any member of the public that wants to speak, we'd appreciate it if you'd sign the sheet in and hold your comments or questions until it's public comment time, okay?
I just asked who the applicant.
That's all right. You'll have a chance to do that in the public comment time.
And this commission will have a chance to get sued in the Ninth Circuit Federal Court for stealing property from 50 American taxpayers.
Thanks. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Amy. Good to be back. I recognize a number of you from when we were here, I think just over a year ago. My name is David Mount with Malum Architects. The address is 71 Columbia Street, Seattle, Washington, 98104. I'd like to introduce other members of the team that are here this evening that certainly can answer questions and have certainly contributed to this presentation. First of all, Steve Crawford and Roy Snorgett from the Issaquah School District. With us also is Jennifer Mundy, the landscape architect, Kevin Smith, a civil engineer, Glenn DeBrule from the traffic engineer. We also have fortunate to have a general contractor as part of our team. So Brian Gormley and Colin McGlynn from Cornerstone Engineering, and Greg Stewart also from Malum Architects there at the end. So they will help me answer any of your questions, and Jennifer will also actually help me with a portion of this presentation as well. So we are, oh, that's not gonna work. Amy gave a very detailed overview, and I will try to keep this brief and hit on things that she maybe didn't go into as much detail on. This is a multi-phase project, and I'll explain what that means. But we have on a single site, the high school, as you are aware, currently an elementary school and a community high school, which will ultimately be moving off of the site, and the new middle school, which will be taking a place on the property. And then finally, the transportation center, which is also part of the greater property where there is work transforming the access point and expanding some bus parking spaces within that transportation center. The project, in fact, I think we may have given Amy a little misinformation. She mentioned 32 acres. We're actually impacting 24 acres. That 32 was, I believe, the number that was from the previous development that you saw. So we are actually scaled back, and I'll explain that a bit of sort of the site area that we're impacting. 131,000 square feet approximate middle school is the primary project that we'll be discussing. It's not going to work tonight. So to give you an overview, and I'll go into detail around the phasing, we are anticipating to begin construction this spring with everything wrapping up in the winter of 2017. And our first phase, which will be the major construction phase of the building, will happen through really the beginning of school of 2016. That will carry a bit into the fall after school is occupied to button up some site elements. And the property will sit in that condition for a period of time while work is being done to move the other two facilities off-site. So the period from October 2016 to July 2017 will be a time when there is little or no work being done on the site. And then finally, a second phase will happen July 2017 through December 2017. And again, I'll describe what that means. Just to step back, talking about project goals, so really give you sort of the genesis for the beginning of this project, working with a group at the middle school and school district staff to really just clarify what the major intent was with moving the middle school to this campus. One important element is actually to create a distinct character of the middle school. It's a distinct group of students, and that it has actually, while it has some benefits for sharing site with the high school, there's clarity between those two buildings, and that drove a lot of the site placement. Certainly a facility, primarily this is an education facility and meeting the needs specifically of middle school students, not elementary school or high school students, but as we design schools, there are very specific needs, both physical and emotional and academic for middle school students. So those are important elements in the design of the school. Incorporating sustainable features, really connecting to this beautiful place, the site where these buildings sit, was a strong driver at the high school design, and that carries into the middle school. And into the internal actual educational spaces, really thinking about very high quality educational spaces. The placement of windows and the connections within the school were very important design elements. And along with that is really about those relationships and spaces within the school and creating a very a strong community within the school. And finally, while they are two distinct schools, recognizing this is a civic campus with a lot of public use, both from the field and the school facilities, and really making sure that's a very cohesive idea with the placement of the middle school, which clearly today with Clark Elementary and the high school, that's not, really as a cohesive single campus. So those were really major project goals from the beginning of the project. We're coming back to you with a new design that really was a response to some significant change in needs that the school district recognized with the anticipated significant growth, particularly in the city center of Issaquah, and the enrollment growth that they're anticipating at these schools that serve the city center. And that really was an opportunity or really a necessity for us to stand back and really think about the utilization of the site and of the building to really anticipate this growth. And some of those elements that became important, which also was an opportunity to respond to many of the input that we got from this commission at the time, and they actually, a lot of these things came together, and we're able to respond to those as well as respond to this sort of future need. And part of that is really using the site as efficiently as possible. And the building, creating, instead of a 2-story building, a 3-story building with the primary classroom wings for that ability to expand, but also to make sure that there is adequate site areas remaining on the site, to collapse the bus loading between the two schools into a single area, and to really rethink about the programming of the site elements like the fields, so that we can get more use out of the fields and also impact less of the property. So some of those elements, and I apologize, I realize everyone wasn't here for the previous design, so I won't assume that, but as Amy described, the existing high school sits here with its parking, with the primary entry point with the traffic light on 2nd Avenue. What our redesign allowed us to do was really to get the most use out of this major single entry point to the site with our circulation, really allowing the 2 front doors of the school to be facing each other and becoming equally important as one comes onto the site. We were we were also able to, for those who recall, we were actually developing quite a bit of the site area on this portion of the property. The redesign allowed us to really distinguish an area that was going to be dedicated to high school use. This is the high school tennis courts, high school softball fields and practice fields, and future high school expanded parking up here, and allow that to be separate from an area that was very much dedicated to the middle school and its athletic facilities, softball fields, track and field here. With, as I said, the element of shared use being the bus drop-off to allow buses not to need to exit the high school and then re-enter the site, the middle school, we rethought how those buses would circulate on and off of the site to be able to serve both properties. Some of the common elements to the previous design were really about the design of the middle school with a protected inner courtyard, very intentional about creating a safe place for middle schoolers to access, directly outside of science classrooms and outside their common spaces. Very different approach from the high school, which was very much about sort of opening it up to the community and being sort of sending those kids out into the world. It was important to have a very clear delineation between the outside and sort of the interior of the school. Also, by placing the track and field on the west side of the site, We did move the gymnasium and the athletic functions within the building to better connect all those outside play areas west of the main facility. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about site circulation because I know that's a very important element, and this will describe the site a little bit more detail, how it will actually function. And Amy touched on this with a kind of overwhelming site circulation diagram, which I've pulled out the individual pieces that I think will help everyone understand how this will work a little bit better. So the first layer is the parent and visitor vehicles. So for the most part, what you see on the south portion of the site are existing circulation routes that will continue for the high school. So parents, visitors have a drop-off area, and they come and go through the main entry area. We've, again, really tried to maximize the use of this main entry to keep access to the school in one location and have our loop off of that same main drive to become a parent drop-off and visitor access loop to the middle school. We have the option of actually extending all the way down to a turnaround behind the high school, the queuing lane for parents that might get early and might start to, and will wait and for the kids to be let out. Staff vehicles, we are suggesting staff utilize both Evans as well as the main entry to the campus. Again, high school staff circulation remains very much as is, and the middle school circulation circulates to the primary staff parking lot, which are to the east and to the north of the campus. And because this parking is also at the north end, serving this end of the building, and for various other needs for access, we imagine this will be for some staff, a preferred route of coming and going along Evans. Student vehicles. This is, again, the primary route for the students that are driving currently for the high school. We don't have any students driving in the middle school, but we will have additional high school parking off of Evans, and then a future parking lot and an existing small gravel parking lot that exists off of Evans here as well. The intent is to avoid all traffic of students actually going through the high school, so those are very two distinct areas for the high schoolers to arrive driving. The buses, which were one of the more important elements to place in a way that could serve both schools, will be entering onto Evans Street, and that is one of the motivations for an access point here, and we'll be circulating here in two lines at a place where the pickup and drop-off will occur in between the two schools. And Amy described a bit how that works, but I can show you also the pedestrian circulation. Those buses then will exit with the traffic light at the main entry. Middle school pedestrian and bicycle circulation off of 2nd Avenue, around the coming in off of 2nd Avenue connects to the front door of the middle school, and also allows for access to the bus area on the south edge of this parking lot. High school circulation will stay very much as it does now, with the exception of the high school students that will be using the bus, and they will come across a single controlled access point here and then disperse across here to a place where they will be picked up for the buses. These elements here will be staffed at all times when buses are available because of the number of students that will be coming and going from both schools. It's a normal operations for schools to actually staff the crossings to make sure that that is a safe transition. The high schoolers will also have part of an existing route up to the parking lot up there. I'll describe that in a little less detail, or a little less with the interim site as well in a moment. So phasing, these are actually some drawings that are the beginnings of the logistic plans for the general contractor, who is able to help us in planning for the phasing of the site. So I apologize for how faint it is, but the existing Clark Elementary School will sit here, existing Tiger Mountain Elementary School, and then the new middle school here. What we will have is a very clear delineation around the construction, fencing, both solid and chain link fencing that it will occur along here to allow the construction activities to be contained within this general area here. For Tiger Mountain Elementary, or sorry, Tiger Mountain High School, their usage of the parking lot is largely unchanged here. We are reconfiguring some of the parking areas around Clark Elementary to allow for both fire access and expanded parking in Clark. But Clark will largely operate as it does today, with the exception that they will not have their play field available to them. So we are expanding some areas to allow them to have more outdoor play areas. And again, high school schoolers will continue to use this lot and access along this edge of the site, with construction happening in this area. Primary construction access will be off of Evans Road. During the interim phase, what I just described will largely remain intact, with the separation between the two schools. I'll describe this in a little bit more detail, but what we have is a partially completed parent drop-off loop occurring here. Buses will remain in the current location at the high school, and the parking, as I described, at Tiger and Clark will stay as in the first phase. The final phase, over the summer of 2017, all the areas in the blue will be completed, so the major site elements around vehicular and pedestrian circulation will be completed prior to school starting. So at that point, the buildings will also be demolished and the school will start to operate in its final state, and then through the fall, the fields will be completed. I won't go into too much detail here because I think I've described that mostly. Clark and Tiger parent drop-off, somewhat reduced, but still the same concept around access to the middle school will occur for parents. Staff, again, in much the same way they currently operate and in much the same way they will operate at the middle school. The high school students will, again, be, with the exception of not having full access to this parking, they will have very similar operation. Buses will occur down here, you can see, as well as buses for Clark here, as it currently operates, and then student circulation. And at this point, we will be having middle schoolers that will actually be coming down here to use the high school bus loop during this interim time period. High school pedestrian circulation. And then finally, fire access some of the modifications are actually to allow for adequate access to both Clark and the middle school during this interim period. So before I jump into the building design, I'm going to ask Jennifer to come up and talk a little bit about the site elements, the program elements, and then I'll move inside the building.
Do I just put
Middle.
the
Yeah.
arrow? Okay. My name's Jennifer Mundy. I'm the landscape architect on the project with Cascade Design Collaborative. We are also located in Seattle on Western Avenue. So I'd like to quickly describe how we are responding to some of the perimeter buffer requirements. Along 2nd Avenue here, we have a type 1 buffer requirement along the wall edge of the track. And we also are providing the type 1 for all of our parking lot edges. When we are putting something in front of the playfield, it's the type 3 buffer that we'll be providing, so it isn't quite as dense as the type 1 more solid evergreen buffers. There are some patches of existing woods, and we're trying to save as much of them as possible. And in the design of the buffers, we're going to utilize native materials and try to put in plants that will grow and fill in evergreen screening as quickly as possible. The concept for our school grounds is really rooted in providing a safe educational space for the the middle school students, since I was just going to say this is not an elementary school, it's middle school, and we have a different learning environment, different capabilities of the students and different interests. So in designing the spaces around the building, we were paying special attention to the needs of the middle school kids. They like to climb on things still. They're really energetic and want to move around, but they're also very social and want to hang out in comfortable groupings. And so we've got a lot of edges, kind of eddies of spaces where, for instance, at the main entry as you're coming in, there is a space here that allows for parents to interact and pause and have a conversation, and there's some benches to wait to be picked up to create a pleasant feeling entry environment. And then we have this lovely courtyard that provides, as David was saying, a very comfortable environment that is protected, shielded from the noise from above, and provides in this corner a stepped amphitheater type gathering space. And along this, so the ground floor classrooms here are the science classrooms, and we're creating what we're calling science porches, so the students can spill out from the science rooms and do experiments outside. We've got on the site low impact development strategies to deal with stormwater, and so there's rain gardens in the courtyard and rain gardens outside of the building here that will be doubling as demonstration educational facilities, so the students can learn about how infiltration happens. They could do water quality testing, that sort of thing. And on the subject of low impact development, we are providing rain garden infiltration areas to treat the stormwater throughout the site. So we're keeping the water on the site and using the fact that this particular property has a really quick infiltration rate, and we can have the water get filtered and screened and go through into the recharging the aquifer. So the water flowing off the parking lot spaces will go into a rain garden and get filtered. The water flowing from this area will go into a rain garden down here. The parking lot up here will have rain gardens. The central drop-off parking lot has a rain garden in the middle. So we're encouraging that sort of treatment of the water. As well as on Evans, we are creating a treatment facility here that doubles as a buffer between the neighbors and the school. So we're trying to use double duty wherever we can, take advantage of that in the design. You'll also notice that the portables here, that if we need to put them in, we took a cue from the way the Tiger Alternative High School is designed, and how actually very lovely those portable buildings are with all of their vine maples and things around. So that's the concept for these portables, that they won't be just lined up, but they'll be clustered to create a community space and have some vegetation around them, so that they'll be a pleasant space and not sort of the unwelcomed place to have to go to class. It'll be the fun place to go to class. So I guess I should quickly say, so there are athletic fields here. This is going to be a synthetic turf field with a running track around. And we've got an amphitheater series of sort of bleacher steps tucked into the hillside, so you can watch. And then this green space here is a sloping lawn, so there's also sort of informal hangout space to watch the games and take advantage of the fact that this is a terraced site, and so the field is at a lower level, and then the softball field is up at the level of the school building, and then we have these upper fields for the high school up at yet another level. If you have any questions, I will be here to answer them.
I'll quickly wrap this up with the building design. The main entry of the school is here. As I mentioned before, an important element was actually the placement of the gym and athletic facilities to actually have good connection to the athletic fields. And of course, looking at the administration as that as folks arrive to the main drop-off area, have this view to the southeast and to the main entry as oversight to this entry plaza. We've actually designed this to allow for access and use of the commons and the gymnasium, and with the potential to actually zone those areas, knowing that there'll be quite a bit of public use, and yet trying to keep spaces as open as possible as well, so that the commons or cafeteria isn't just a big dark box, but is actually a open glassy space that is connected to this internal courtyard. It also doubles as their performance space with a stage, and then the other performing arts classrooms on this side of the building. Finishing out the east side of the building, very intentionally we've put the service and kitchen areas here, really kind of butting those areas that have fewer windows up to the side of the sportsman club, and the classrooms, the 3-story classroom wing on the west side of the site, that really has outlook to the views, but also is somewhat buffered by this volume from the noise from the club. As we move upstairs, the library sits above the administration area with the circulation areas that look down onto the commons. This idea of connectivity was very important to really create that community sense that everyone is seeing each other and everyone is part of the same school community. Again, with classrooms continuing up to the second level, an auxiliary gym and fitness room above the locker rooms, and then finally on the 3rd floor, just the classroom, continuation of the classrooms. As Amy mentioned, there was a strong intent to be very compatible with the materiality of the high school. With that, we have used very similar materials of the ground face concrete block, a lighter gray cement board panel, a warmer painted cement board panel, and then also a darker cement board panel with articulated patterning joints. And then finally, similar to the high school, a screening sort of cap to the building made out of metal standing seam panels. This is the main entry, slightly different than perhaps the one in your packets, where we've better represented what the landscape design actually is, where there are seat walls and variations in paving, and a place for the arrival and departure from the school. As you've seen here from the west, the view of the main classroom wing and the covered play area. What's missing here are a row of trees that actually go along this path, but those were eliminated just for clarity in these views. The same 4 primary materials, 5 primary materials, the 3 cement board colors, the concrete block, and the metal roof panels. And then finally, from the north end of the courtyard, similarly, this is actually a landscape screen here to really contain that courtyard. It was eliminated to allow views just from this viewpoint. I will show just a blow-up of what the patternings are of the materials. While we are using essentially the same material here, you can see very distinct usage. Sort of board and batten and accent color happening here in the line with the windows, of varying widths and heights of cement board paneling in the darker gray areas, and then the regular patterning in the light areas, along with the smooth ground face lighter block and the metal screening at the roof level. And we have a sample of those materials here if you all would like to see those. So that is it for our presentation.
All right, at this time, we'll go to the opportunities for members of the public who wish to address the commission, ask questions, seek clarifications from staff and/or members of the applicant contingent. So if there are people that would like to speak and that have signed up, again, I'd ask you to, when you get up, to come to the mic and give your name and your address. So, and, the first name on here is Leif Stephanie.
All right, my name is Leif Stephanie. I live on currently 385 East Sunset Way, Issaquah, Washington. And so yeah, I'm a local resident here. And I'm here also to represent the Issaquah Sportsman's Club, which is located just right behind the proposed project site. Just a quick info on our club. The Issaquah Sportsman's Club was founded on October 5th, 1921. Most of you probably just know it as a gun range, but we've actually been a community-oriented nonprofit organization that has been serving this community here for nearly 100 years. A quick example of that is that we donated in 1937 10.7 acres of our land to the city, which is currently part of where these schools currently are sitting. Overall, there's no issues that the club has with the proposed plans. The only issue that we see is noise. And the reason for our concerns is the parking lot that is supposed to be built up in the northeast corner of the project site. Our property is surrounded by old-growth trees, which have for years been providing a natural sound barrier, essentially. And these trees have been diminishing now because over the years, through the expansion of the schools. And this current plan calls for the removal of a rather large portion of trees, which is right next to our range, and therefore also has a large impact on the noise output of the range. As a club, we have actually been very proactive lately about reducing our noise output. Last year in 2014, we applied for a state grant to help fund the installation of a noise reduction system. And we were awarded this grant and will begin this project, or the construction of that project, later this year. Therefore, we think it would be prudent for the school district to take the noise level into consideration as cutting down the trees in that corner, especially in that critical spot, which is literally right next to our firing line. As cutting down those trees will basically defeat our efforts in reducing the general noise output to the city. Something to consider is, for example, building a noise wall instead of tearing down trees, or building a multi-tier parking lot on one of the existing parking lots rather than cutting down the trees and building a parking lot up there. Why is this important? Well, increasing noise through this project will not only affect the students at the schools, but also the community as a whole, and also surrounding property values. Our final point or issue that we have with the removal of the trees in the northeast corner of the project site is environmental. The woods, as we know, support all our local wildlife, which is already diminishing because of all the developing in the area. So we think that rather than looking for the simply cheapest way to accommodate more vehicles, why not set an example for greener development by erecting a multi-tier parking lot over one of the existing parking spaces that's already available. This would have a lesser impact on our already fragile environment, and I believe was also already proposed last year by the Development Commission. And that's about all that we had to say about this one.
Thank you, Mr. Stepney.
Thank you.
Next is Michelle Gibson, and I've neglected to mention before, in respect for the continuity of the meeting, we'd ask that you try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. Okay? Thank you.
First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our concerns regarding the upcoming development. My name's Michelle Gibson. I've been a homeowner on Southeast Evans Lane for over 20 years. Proud to say my daughter went to both IMS and IHS. And now my grandson will be starting next year at Clark. So there's 2 generations there. However, we still have some concerns. We do understand the need for growth in our school district, yet still have some concerns before the plan and site development are approved. A lot of this traffic was brought up a lot. That's a huge one of our concerns in the neighborhood as well, where I live. While you do propose to widen Southeast Evans Street, the impacts to the neighborhood of adding 32 buses twice a day, faculty, under the faculty also their transportation, and more high school students. Under the current proposed infrastructure is with your plan, it seems to be overwhelming negative. A tiered parking lot, this gentleman just mentioned, between the high school and proposed middle school. And I was here at the last development meeting last year. That was suggested, so I agree with that. That would take less, I mean, we're spreading, you're saying you want the school to go up so it doesn't spread, but we're spreading out the parking lot. So with that comes down the trees. There's a lot of speeding up and down, litter left on the Southeast Evans Street, goes into our neighborhood, and I just see more of that increasing with how the proposal of the plan for Southeast Evans right now. Every week we go out, clean up after the high schoolers, and in fact, in one of your slides, slide G was my house. I could see it in the background, and it's that close to this road. But our woods are so fragile, and we'd like to keep them, and we'd like also to see, I walk there with my grandson and my dog, and many times almost get ran over because these cars are speeding up there. We need better access to the trails. I'm not sure I'm seeing that. We need signage for the trails. We need, if there's any parking to be added, it should be specifically for access to trails. Many times I run into people, they don't know where the trails are. I have to guide them. It just looks like a puzzle out there with the schools and the parking lot. So please, if you would take into consideration the neighborhoods, the residents, the natural wildlife, I would really, really appreciate it. And thank you for the time again. Hope I didn't go over.
That's fine. Tom Meckler?
I will pass.
All right, sir. David Kapler?
Could I have the picture with all the grading up here? That would help.
The site plan?
Yes.
That one there?
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you. Good evening, I'm David Kapler. First, make some comments about Park Point as president of the Issaquah Trails Club, and then I'll get on to my personal comments about the rest of the issues. Park Point is a $6 million investment, plus we gave them 100 TDRs. We're proposing 2 parking, I think the 2 parking spaces got eliminated that the district had planned for this because the trail is now being proposed to be on that other side. There needs to be some kind of decent access to the Park Point property for the community. Right now you have 5 or 6 spots at off of 2nd there near the intersection with Front Street. And if you know, you can park by the gun club You got to, of course, there's high school takes the parking on weekdays and all, but there's parking there, but you don't know where the trail is. There's not one single sign. And we got this great asset for the city that's completely being ignored by this process. Back to my more personal comments, I guess. What drives me nuts about the proposal is the priority we're putting on chauffeuring kids to the school and making it hard to use the buses. The bus area is a long ways from the school. Now we hear there's going to be 4 staff people out there at the 4 crosswalks. Those are staff time that should be put in the classroom, not out doing traffic control. The buses should be people do not want their kids on buses because how long they spend on the buses, and they can get them there to the school faster, they can get them out of the school faster and that. And we need to encourage bus usage, especially in this corridor where the traffic is already so bad. And we all know how much worse it got when September hit region-wide. So why are we trying to discourage people to have kids ride buses by putting them out, no protection, out here in the rain and the wind, mixing the middle school kids and the high school kids out of visibility of either school? The high school kids would be just fine mixing with the middle school kids up by the school where there'll be more easier and better supervision, and there should be a canopy across area so the kids have some shelter when they're waiting for those buses. So I would move the bus lane right through here and put the parking lot out in the next loop. Just reverse those, and it would save a lot of staff time, a lot more kids riding the buses, a better bus experience for kids. And every car we increase on the site is more mitigation. The school district has to pay for traffic that should be being used in the classroom, not to subsidize more single vehicles. We don't have an up-to-date traffic or parking counts, and those really need, I don't see how the group can make a decision tonight without those. We don't know what the mitigation is going to be based on those new traffic counts. The Route 200 is mentioned as partial mitigation for getting kids to school. In the morning, the 200 bus doesn't gets in front of the high school sometime between 10 and 10:11 in the morning, so it's not going to do any good for the getting high school kids, and it leaves the community center at 2:17. They've shortened the hours of the 200, so it's ineffective as anything to help with moving students around. Move the reader board to the other corner at the street there, and then you don't have to have it real tall. Again, SEPA hasn't been finished yet. I don't know how you can make a decision without the SEPA being done. We do need a canopy and covered across the front of the school, even if that's where the cars are going to be rather than the buses. Still need more protection there. There's going to be apparently a lot of extra material from the site that'll be trucked off. I mentioned in one of my letters that a previous representative owner of the Park Point didn't want any extra berming at the gun club from the softball fields that were built. And so they didn't do any more berming. There's going to be a lot of material off here that's going to have organics in it or whatever that can't be used on the site or at some other site to build on. And it'd be great material to do some additional berming. And I would even encourage the city to be doing some berming on their actual Park Point property as well to make that a much more pleasant area, which is used a lot by the cross-country teams and in classes and in after-school training. So there's definitely some ability to reduce the off-site trucking and reducing sound by using that material, which I believe is not and there'll be enough unusable material from the site. It's not going to be all nice gravel that would have a good use. I guess that's the main thing. Thank you.
Connie Marsh?
Okay, my name's Connie Marsh, and I have a store at 1175 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, Suite B11, and also live in town. Okay, they're at least trying to share their bus loop. Good. Now I'm going to move on. I was surprised to see the gravel trail right after we saw the picture of all the students parking along the road, the gravel road with a gravel trail with the students parking. Suddenly I didn't understand how that would work on either side of the road, having a gravel trail with a gravel road. The trail disappears to me. One, it's not safe if you've ever driven down the road with the high school students. Two, it's super dusty and you choke. So I think that whole thing needs to be rethought and fixed. I sent a letter, and then I sent my letter after I had the opportunity to read the staff report, so you got track changes, sorry. Part of the problem with moving the trail that direction is the same problem that everyone has. While we love the Sportsman's Club, you get too close to the Sportsman Club, and frankly, you do want to just sort of hit the ground, especially people who are from out of town, because they don't know if they're going to get shot. So to move the major trail that is our connection to Park Point and other points ever closer to the Sportsman Club reduces the quality of that trail substantially. Currently, it's further down, quite a ways away. The softball field is in between, so you don't get that sensation of imminent death. But having walked that trail next to all those cars to cut the Scotch broom, I know that feeling, even though I know the club is there. Sometimes it just scares you. So I would suggest that either you, if you're going to move the trail, you require some noise mitigation for the trail, or you continue to have the trail further away. Now, I'm going to stay with trails just because I'm on that topic. There is the existing little baby parking lot by the softball field, and they're saying that the way the kids get to the high school from there is skinnying along that narrow edge. Well, that actually isn't the case. What they do is they come around and they take the existing trail, or they walk through the existing parking lot. They basically go back out along the road for the most part, because it's really sort of dangerous walking along that little trail because they don't control the blackberries. They fertilize them with their grass clippings instead, and so there's this blackberry tendril that grabs your ankles and tries to throw you down the hill. So I don't believe that that is the existing pathway, and I don't think that that is an appropriate or legitimate pathway to assume that any high school student is going to walk down that trail. Continuing on with that, I'm not exactly sure, and I didn't hear an explanation tonight, why you would put the high school parking way down by Evans. Maybe there's a reason that you don't put the field down by Evans and have the high school parking actually closer to the high school. It just seems to make a lot more sense to me, but maybe there is some reason that I don't understand. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying there. Then we get to the conflicts of cars versus buses. And right now you have your buses coming in on Evans, and you have your parents doing their drop-off, and you have this corner. Which is where the parents are trying to go in and come out, and the buses are coming in. So you basically have the parents taking a left-hand turn in front of the line of buses, seemingly. which seems very awkward. And so I thought about this a lot, and one thing is, that's actually a significant grade change right there. I think last year I probably showed you a picture of it coated in weeds. It does seem like it is a perfect place to have parking below, separated parking with the entrance above, where the bus loop would be on the top, taking up that whole segment, and bring the buses in off of Second, and bring the people dropping off their kids in on Evans. Less impact to the neighborhood, more use of the light with all those buses at the original entrance, and then a larger loop on top. And yeah, it might be more expensive, but you know what? You are creating a sort of this odd suburban car system with a very urban school. And so I think you got half of it right. You got the urban school right, but the cars and the drop-off, no. Okay, so I'm gonna, 32 buses twice a day. Do you want to live there now? I think that is a serious impact. It wasn't addressed in the SEPA, no, and it wasn't in the SEPA checklist, so I didn't understand how they were really mitigating that by saying we're going to have landscaping. I just don't think that that does cut it. So I am going to move to the other side of the street, which is the transit center. And so it's so funny because I think the railroad grade where they're saying that it was graded before when they did the railroad cut actually predates the gun club. It might be one of the few things in town that does. And I was never really aware that we took 100-year-old pre-grades and said that that is now a man-made slope. That's fascinating. I don't know if it's actually true, but it's an amazing interpretation. So I disagree with that. The other thing is the staff report was unclear. They actually are going into the buffer of the wetland, and they do have to have a mitigation for going into the wetland buffer. I haven't seen it yet. The buffer isn't so bad. The wetland is fairly impacted, mainly because the bus barn has been right next to it for all this time. I would prefer to have most of the mitigation done in helping repair the wetlands. And also because it is so visible from the Rainier Trail, I would ask that the fencing that they put in there be decorative and non-galvanized, because you simply aren't supposed to have your galvanized chain link fencing right next to a wetland. So I would like a condition for decorative fencing and to get rid of the galvanized chain link fencing. Lessons learned from the high school. It's colorless in the winter, and this looks to be equally colorless. There was a lot, and still is a lot of confusion for kids who've only been to flat schools especially, if there is not some sort of visible locator when you go from floor to floor. You don't know where you are and they get lost. So I don't know where anybody can talk about interiors, but I want to bring it up just in case y'all can do something about that in future design. And also, the deciduous trees that are mainly in front of the high school make it look even more desolate and prison-like in the winter time, even against the green slope. So I think some more variety in, even if it has to be mechanical, to break up some of that, wow, we are brown. Also, we have a common condition now in Issaquah, which is any disturbed areas need to be landscaped, and I prefer it to be with native vegetation within 3 months of the completion of the phase. I added the last part. But what we find is there are these little bits of land that are left over, and they basically just grow weeds unless someone tells someone that they actually have to plant something that is going to look good and grow well in those places. And we don't need any more weeds. You saw the picture of the Scotch broom up there, which is a residual from the high school, which my understanding still has not finished their checklist. And they have lots of weeds growing in their landscaping, and it seems to be a problem that we cannot surmount. So I would like to try to get that done to begin with. You've read all the rest. I'm way over my 5 minutes. Got to go. Thanks. Bye.
All right. At this point, we will move on. Yes. If there is anybody else that wants to speak, you can do so now. If not, we will move into commission discussion. Again, I'll remind folks, this is an opportunity for members of the Development Commission to seek clarification, and we're going to have rebuttals. We're going to have rebuttals first, but then when the commissioners speak, our objective here is to get clarification on issues that came up or in the materials that we received that were not addressed so far. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Amy. Her objective here is to address some of the issues that have been brought up by members of the public.
So actually, we do appreciate the comments from Ms. Marsh. They were very insightful. I just wanted to make one clarification regarding her statement that the proposal will be encroaching on the.
Can you hear? Can you hear
Is
Ms.
this
Marsh?
working?
So maybe, or you could, if you could get up to
Should
the
I
mic,
go
would
up
that be all
there?
right?
Okay.
Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Can we try again? Is this
Very good.
better?
Very
Okay. Let me repeat what I said.
Yeah, it's been requested that you do speak from the main mic. Thank you.
So this is Amy Tars again, just for the record. I just wanted to address one statement that Ms. Marsh mentioned regarding the wetlands. I'm not sure if everybody brought their staff report. On page 31 of 201 is an actual detail of the wetland with the buffer, and there's actually two dashed lines that you see on the drawing. One, the smaller dash is actually the buffer, and the outer dash line is the building setback line. So the proposed parking for expanded parking for the buses is actually showing as encroaching on the building setback line, which is acceptable, but it is outside of the wetland buffer. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff rebuttals, comments? All right, with that, we'll go to Mr. Soa. Do you have anything to ask?
I think the comments on the traffic and the impacts of that are really profound, and the notion of trying to move from a car-driven community to a bus situation really makes a lot of sense to me. And so looking at the potential or the opportunities to mitigate traffic is really important, and I don't think we've done a very good job with that. I just see that as being a really great opportunity for improvement on the proposal.
Okay.
I ask questions?
Sure. Understood.
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of things that we're trying to squeeze into this small lot here. I appreciate the gun club, donating the land out. And this goes back before my time, before our time. But so here again, we're trying to establish some good neighbors, be good neighbors, and I appreciate the school district trying to put in the middle school in a small lot. Ideally, you probably want a lot of land with the middle school. But that being said, I agree that there's a lot of parking issues and traffic issues that's crisscross, and you have a lot of kids running around during school start day and then at the end of school. So that's something that I guess we need to maybe look at that again. And the fact that we're encouraging people to drive, parents to drive, drop off kids, that it's pretty evident by the way it's designed here. But the question that I have is how many buses do we have? Is 32 buses per day? Is that the count that we're looking at? And if that's, and then I'm leading to is that do we have enough holding area for buses? Or is it a sequential, you're on bus number 2, so you come out at such time, and then move on.
Should I answer questions now? So currently, I believe there are 29 buses, is that correct? And so we were planning for a bit of expansion to 32, anticipating the growth. And they do all fit within that bus drop-off area, parked at one time in 2 lines. There'll be 2 lines of buses here parked parallel to each other. They stagger them. It's a very common way to be very efficient about bus parking. They do it currently at the high school that way. And then they all are parked before school is let out, and then kids are all loaded on before the first bus or any bus leaves. In the morning, they will come 1 and 2 at a time and drop off and then leave.
Yeah, in the morning, dropping off, I don't see that as a big issue. It's in the afternoon when the kids gets off, and you have all those buses there, and the first bus isn't moving because little Joey is not on the bus yet, so you're holding up all those buses.
And that's
I don't know, do you have enough room for
yeah,
holding area?
they will stack from here back to here, and have the potential, even if they grow beyond that number, to stack back in here. That's very typical at schools, that you wait until everyone's loaded and then you leave for that very reason. It's a lot of kids. There are 900 kids here. There are 1,800 kids down here. A lot of kids moving, and it's very typical to say everyone's going to be loaded before it happens. It's also very typical to separate parent drop-off, which is inevitable to a certain degree. And certainly when you think about the number of kids, there is many times more that are on this bus than they are on the drop-off, but there is a necessity for a certain amount of drop-off. The bus drivers are seen as professional drivers, and that is part of the reason why they are put here. We're putting the non-professional drivers, us parents, in the condition to be up adjacent to the school for that reason.
To add a little bit with regards to the questions
You identify
regarding...
yourself, please, sir.
Steve Crawford, Director of Capital Projects for the school district. To add a little bit to the questions regarding busing, the district provides busing for every student that lives in the district. There's a 1-mile radius that the district doesn't get funded for, but transportation in those areas that the safe walk path would cross busy streets and things, there's transportation provided for those kids as well. The district has the 6th largest public transportation system in the state. We provide transportation to the middle and high school today that averages between 1,400 and 1,500 students a day. There is an emphasis to try and encourage kids to ride the bus. High fuel prices have helped. Lower prices, they're selling lots more SUVs now. But we do encourage kids to ride the bus. There is no way that you can mandate every kid that rides the bus. There are strong parental concerns by some that it's not safe to let their kid wait at a bus stop or walk to school. So there's going to always be some percentage of parents who are going to drive their kids. There are kids who have after-school activities and things like that parents pick them up and move off to too as well. But there is really a pretty strong commitment to busing and a strong transportation system that does transport a large number of kids.
Good. I guess getting back to my point too is that, you mentioned that there are a lot of unprofessional drivers driving around in this. Well, you got little Joey that needs to catch his bus, and he's going to run through 2 lines of traffic before he gets to his first bus. So you have, the potential of accident is fairly high. He's going to run.
What doesn't show in the plan here, because the scale is that this is a rain garden in between here. So that's difficult to cross. There's also a 4-foot fence that runs on the outside of the parent drop-off across through here, so that kids who are going to the bus will travel this pathway, or they'll travel this pathway and then load onto the buses. So there is a conscious separation and recognized need to be able to prevent kids from just running across the parking lot anywhere that they might want to.
And what did you say, you have a separation? Do you have a fence of some kind that loops around in that area?
There would be a fence on the outside.
Oh.
This is actually a 2 to 4 foot retaining wall along this south side of the middle school parking that drops down to the bus pickup
Retaining wall
drop-off
and a
level.
fence.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Ray, can I jump in just on that subject? Mr. Kapler brought up the idea of why not have the bus lanes adjacent to the middle school and switched over. Can you
We've
explain?
looked at a number of different options with regards to bus and parent circulation. If you were to run the buses in through here, your buses are dropping off closest to the school, and then they're running back out through here. That would mean that parents are coming up and dropping off in this zone here. So now all of the kids who are getting dropped off by the parents have that greater potential for moving across. The bus drivers are professionals. There's a limited number of buses, far few trips by vehicles with 29 to 32 buses than there are with parents, and fewer crossings. So we've looked at it. We felt that this really did provide the safest separation and situation for students.
Same thing. To stay on this same subject, I understand the school board sets its policy regarding what it tries to encourage and discourage, but would it not help encourage people to put their kids on the bus if they're in the the optimal area? To have the buses have priority on loading and movement, and if you want to pick up your kid, you do it further away from the building and you wait to move in or out of the area until the buses have completed their job.
Well, it becomes a question of how far you put them away and how many crossings and what kind of travel paths are
Yeah,
going
I'm just
to
suggesting
be
that
in
you
between.
said that you can't mandate, and I understand that.
Yeah,
But you can certainly, it would seem, it would be possible to provide the priorities on proximity and movement to buses.
Well, you know, the middle school and high school kids ride the same bus. They have for a number of years, and they will continue to ride the same bus. So basically, you're looking at a situation where the bus pickup and drop-off has a shared priority between the middle school and the high school. And that's really what's suggesting that it's located in this area. I don't see that putting the bus lane here and the parents here is going to make any difference in terms of desirability as to whether you ride the bus or not. It's going to mean that there's more kids that are crossing parent traffic areas than there would be in the plan that's proposed.
I'm sorry, can I?
Particularly when you consider that the high school kids then have to cross all that parent traffic.
Well,
High school
go ahead,
kids.
Bill.
Well, I guess I trust high schoolers in front of parent traffic more than middle schoolers. I'm thinking if where the bus zone is shown now, if that's where the parents drop off that one long lane, that one, if that's where the parents drop off and the buses are all near the school, the kids that are crossing in front of parent drivers, which are not as good as the bus drivers, only the kids that are coming in and out of those cars, because those kids, when they walk around to the side there, they're crossing in front of buses, but again, the buses are better drivers. It's not the kids getting out of buses that are crossing in front of parent drivers, which are not as good drivers.
Yeah, this does limit the crossings to primarily the east and west ends, and those are locations where there will be monitored staff addressing and holding cars.
And the way it's set up now, the kids crossing on the east end are crossing in front of parent drivers, not bus drivers.
On this end, there is, and that is a controlled crossing. But it also means that the high school students who are coming up don't have to cross all of the middle school parent drop-off.
High school students, yeah.
Well,
How about the intersection where these all meet?
right here?
Right there. Who's, you got traffic control there to, okay, parents, two cars can come through now, oops, stop, here comes a bus, we're stopping. If the buses just came right in front of the school, you wouldn't have any conflict. Right now, you've got parents crossing in front of buses.
Right now, the buses come in for the middle school and high school and will drop off. The high school schedule is earlier than the middle school. So buses are going to come in for a 7:25 high school opening and drop off kids. The middle school, 7:40 start, parents are going to start to come later. So buses will have arrived, and typically in the morning, they're ones and twos that come in at a time and drop off, and the kids will disperse. Afternoon, middle school gets out earlier. The buses will all be stacked in here prior to their 2:05 dismissal, and then parents will start to arrive to pick up kids. And standard practice, the kids are escorted to the bus. Even at the high school level, there are staff that are along the bus line, and once all the kids are loaded into the bus, then they give the approval for the buses to leave, and they all leave as a platoon. They don't leave individually.
Jared, I guess on the question of the logistics of getting people, students, parents, buses in and out of the campus, trying to figure it out in a 4-hour meeting, something that you guys have given significant thought to, I think, for hours and days and probably months. But I have some other questions. I think we talked about this the last time. Trying to understand the impact of this this arrangement has, particularly on the Evans Street, the properties along Evans Street. Currently for Clark Elementary, and I don't think Tiger has bus access, but what do buses currently access the schools from Evans Street? I know the high school doesn't, but
Clark accesses basically from about this location up along the west side, and then they exit basically at this intersection.
Okay.
And currently there is no, other than somebody getting lost and using the upper high school parking lot entrance, no bus traffic here. We again looked at a number of different options. In the original proposal that was presented earlier, bus traffic came in off of Evans and looped back around and came back out on Evans. We felt that that was duplication of bus traffic that wasn't necessary, and that exiting the buses at the traffic light allowed for controlled movements and movements in both the north and south directions, which was an easier exit. The 29 to 32 buses that would access along Evans twice a day is significantly fewer vehicle trips than if you had, as suggested, parents and visitors accessing off of Evans. That bus traffic occurs basically twice a day and a very sort of limited time frame. If you have parent and visitor traffic coming in off of Evans, that's something that occurs all day long, and it occurs into the evening hours for after-school events. And we felt that the bus traffic there was a lot less of an impact than the vehicle trips that would be generated by parents and visitors.
Just another question so I understand kind of the big picture. So buses that currently in the access lanes and drives for the high school, what happens to that space? It's not on the site plan. That's a fairly significant area now that will not be used for buses in this plan.
And that area, once the phase 2 work is completed, will be reconfigured for additional high school parking.
Okay. And were thoughts given to trying to use that access point as a loop to bring the buses from the high school and then back out at the signal and having a similar location for the drop-off?
We did look at that as well, but then in general, you're making the middle school kids walk a lot further to get to the bus. That the last location that was more central between the two schools was a better location for bus pickup and drop-off. Combining the bus loops does a couple of things. It reduces the total amount of impervious area on the two sites. Currently, if you were to create a separate bus loop for the middle school, you'd be picking up and dropping off kids at the high school And then the buses are back out on back out on Second Avenue, and then accessing the middle school, excuse me, either through Evans or through the traffic light. So combining them brings the buses in, brings them out at the traffic light, and it reduces the amount of bus trips on Second Avenue. I think another thing to consider in this whole overall scheme is that tied together with this is the relocation of Clark and Tiger Mountain to the current Issaquah Middle School campus. So currently the buses are circulating from the middle school off of First Avenue, back across to Second, down Second Avenue to the high school, and then departing from there. This whole overall scheme reduces that bus traffic to this core area right here. Elementary school buses, Clark, excuse me, Clark currently has 4 to 5 buses. So the 29 to 32 buses that are currently traveling through downtown and on First Avenue will be reduced to about 4 to 5 buses. Part of the request related to new traffic counts was to incorporate the traffic counts from the Tiger Mountain and Clark Elementary Schools being on a new site, such that the traffic mitigation for this whole overall project is considered as one piece and taken as a whole.
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead. Could you just remind me, please, of what is going to be where the present middle school, what the plan is for that site once this is completed?
So at the current Issaquah Middle School site, the majority of the middle school area will be the new Clark Elementary. So conceptually, the front access administration building, common central hallway remains in place. Behind that, there's a new multi-purpose room, gym, and music room. The areas that are currently occupied by the single-story campus plan classrooms will be demolished and consolidated into a much more energy-efficient two-story elementary school building. The area where the current classrooms are will become partly hard surface play area, and the elementary school will use the western portion of the current track grass area as their soft play area.
And the traffic for that modified facility will be essentially the same in terms of count and access to Issaquah Hobart it is now, roughly?
Clark as an elementary school will have a smaller population than the middle school, and again, significantly different numbers of buses. The attendance area is much smaller, so that it's using 4 to 5 buses versus the 29 and projected to be 32 buses that will, the 29 that currently serve the middle and high school.
You envision that ultimate completion of these moves to have, say, will result in reduced traffic now on Front Street?
I think
where the traffic comes out of the middle school as it is now?
the Front and Sunset interchange should see reduced traffic. The traffic on First Avenue and the cross street there should be reduced as well when when that area becomes an elementary in the Tiger Mountain.
Any other questions?
You got some portables over there, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the plan for those?
Well, we typically provide space on new school site plans to allow for 4 double portables, that's 8 classrooms, to accommodate increases in growth. We know that the city has approved the core area development plan, which is projected to generate another 2,800 students. That's a pretty significant impact to the school district with regards to the fact that that would generate enough kids to, as percentages go, fill 2 elementaries, a middle school, and about half of a high school.
Yeah.
So
doesn't it make sense to, with those portables, it sounds like the school district needs those rooms. Doesn't it make sense to have those classrooms in the new building and then open up that area? And so my second question is that is there any reason why we're not scooting this whole complex further to the west so that we could open up the parking, separate the parking? I've seen, you can probably do a better parking where one side of the building is for parents, the other side of the building are for bus drop-off. Seems like you're kind of squeezing yourself in that little corner.
Well, the portables would be seen as an interim solution for additional classroom spaces. The long-term build-out, you know, if you consider the fact that there is no vacant or underutilized land in the core area of Issaquah, there are no 10-acre sites that we could acquire for new elementary schools. We have to look at maximizing the utilization of our existing sites first.
Understand.
And our sites will become significantly more dense in the future.
Right.
Part of this planning process envisions that this area right here will become a future 3-story classroom addition. And the need for that's totally predicated on the build-out. It's really hard to project future student populations by what year, when there's going to be as much growth potential as there is.
Right.
The longer it takes to build out, the more aging we have of existing populations.
And I understand that, and that's why I guess I'm trying to figure out why do you need future portable classroom when here we're building a new building? Why couldn't you just add to the new building the classroom that you would need, and then thus you can take out the future portable? You know, that'd be a space, and eventually scoot the building over, and they'll give you the parking or the transportation separation. And I'm just throwing it out, you know, as parents on the east side, parents drop off on the east side of the building, and then school buses drop off on the south side of the building. So we have this real clear safety separation.
Well, you're going to have crossings in this zone unless you put the bus traffic in a two-way direction on Evans, or you put the parent traffic in an ingress and egress mode on Evans. And so all things considered, we felt that this was the best solution and provided the least amount of impact to the neighbors to the north. Basically, we are looking at staff parking on the east and north, and that the parent visitor parking is on the south, which also provides for that space to be utilized by the high school for events when it's after hours for the middle school.
I hear what you said, Steve, but I don't quite agree with it. There's a better way of segregating the bus versus the parents drop-off. Seems to me there's the Clark building that you're trying to stay away from. That's why your middle school is tucked away on the east side. But like Mike says, you know, you probably spend a lot of time thinking about that already.
Well, the area that's to the west of the building where the future portables are located, until there's a need for that, that space is basically playfield area for the middle school. I mean, yeah, we'd like not to put portables in, but to build out the full addition is millions of dollars that wasn't a part of the bond that was put together in 2011 and approved in 2012.
I got two questions. And the first one, I'd like to know, can you address Connie Marsh's question about why that parking lot north of the new field for high school students isn't on the south end, closer to the high school?
On the northwest.
Well, Connie, I think, was talking about this parking here, which is the current parking that serves Tiger Mountain Community High School. We've looked at that. Two things happen. You could move the football field north here, and you could rebuild, you could demo the parking, move the football field north, and then put parking down here. Physically, that fits. What happens is that you lose a lot more of the existing trees in the north corner of this area here, and the retaining wall heights get significantly higher because the grades are dropping off from this point down to the intersection at Evans and 2nd Avenue. So it became visually much more impacting than this situation here.
Okay, it's a good answer.
That's an answer.
The other question I have is, we looked at this project 18 months ago,
Yeah.
something like that. And then apparently it was put on hold for money or something and then redesigned. If I'm not mistaken, the original project was only 2 stories.
The original building was a 2-story classroom configuration. The track and field replaced the high school softball fields in this area, and it extended up into this zone. There was the softball field that got built up into this area and a relocation of the gun club road to provide additional space to accommodate that. Circulation patterns were a little bit different. We looked at that. We, at that time, realized that there was a need for preserving some additional site area for future potential expansion, and we moved to the 3-story plan. The original 2-story plan extended further out this way to accommodate the same number of classrooms in 2 stories as 3 stories. So we basically compacted the building, went to 3 stories instead of 2 stories, allows for future potential expansion in this area if it's needed in the future, and meant that we could save all the trees in this section up in here. We have shown this as it's not part of the current funded project, and it's not part of what would be built in the phase 1, 2, or 3 that were shown. But we have shown this to include this in our traffic counts so that it would be a part of that overall traffic analysis, and we wouldn't be coming back later and looking at that. For the time being, this will remain in trees, and there is a need to relocate the trail outside of its current pathway that runs through the middle of the school site. That's a safety and security hazard that our consultants have recommended is a significant liability and needs to be addressed, and that the trail needs to be relocated out of the core of the school site. So
Yeah, that's fine. The question I have is with regard to the building size. It's now 3 stories, but smaller design. One of the concerns we had the last time we looked at it was that courtyard was going to be blocked.
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 stories. Now it's going to be 3 stories, and in the wintertime it's going to be even darker. It looks like it's wider than it was. It seems to me I remember it being kind of a triangle-looking thing, or trapezoid the last time.
It was.
Did we add more classrooms total to the design, or did we just squish them and raise them?
There was 1 classroom that was added in going from 2 stories to 3 stories to fill out the same footprint area on the 3rd floor. The configuration of the building originally had an angle in the classroom wing here. There was a narrower area of space between the east and the west wings as in the original, and this has been widened out. Yeah, we've looked at that, and we've looked at sun angles and things like that, so we do understand, and there is a lot of transparency in the building in this area, so.
Has the building, just in regard to it, Commissioner DeLong said, regards to the portables, is the building designed for chance to add another floor later on?
The building's not designed to add another floor, but it is designed to expand out to the north with an additional 3, or that addition could go more stories.
Okay.
And that's part of what articulates the window area in the north wall versus the area that's solid windows is that ties into a future expansion.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, in the material that was provided to the commissioners by the city staff, on page 51, it refers to frontage improvements along 2nd Avenue include a 10-foot wide sidewalk, and I'm quoting, that serve a shared use trail for bike and pedestrian circulation. We all know that in the Seattle area there is a constant conflict between bicyclers and cars and pedestrians. And I believe that the state law says that bicycles are vehicles and they are not to go on sidewalks, and there are penalties for doing that. So I know this says a trail, but how do you propose to safely mix It's done on public trails, the Gilman Trail, I understand that, but those, does this fall into that category in terms of mixed use?
It's a similar situation. The section of Second Avenue along the front of the high school is basically set up currently in Sharrows, where the bike lane shares the traffic lane. As we've discussed with the city, the options as you proceeded north, you could continue the Sharrows. I think the overall sense was that a wider combined bike and pedestrian path on the east side of the roadway provided a safer circulation pattern. There's also what is shown here as a bike path that basically connects down to the Rainier Trail, because currently there are no bike lanes on the section of Second Avenue north of Evans to Sunset. So that bicycle use on the Rainier Trail would be able to use the new connector. This was a paved pathway up that provides a crossing into the shared use pathway that provides access directly into the middle school without crossing any traffic patterns, crosses high school students at the traffic signal, which then puts them onto a sidewalk walk path into the front of the building.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any more, are there any more questions for this gentleman before we proceed?
For the architect?
Oh, for the school board representative?
Not for this.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
The question I have is for the tracks. You have seatings right here. Is that all the seatings that you need for a school?
That's right.
Traditionally, there's not much seating that's used for middle school events. And so as was explained, there is the section here that was set up with terraced seating. There's a grass bank along here for any overflow sort of event, but typically middle schools don't have any more bleacher seating than what's shown here.
Yeah, number seems pretty small. But
Seriously there, I'm sorry, one more question, but what's what would the off-hours access and parking be for the athletic fields for people on nights and weekends that wanted to use the field?
Typically, the school parking lots are open. That was one of the other advantages of keeping this parking on the north end here where it already exists, is that it provides grade level access to the football field track, which is striped for soccer and lacrosse. And basically, there's a short rise up to the softball field level here, so that there is this parking available to serve both of the play fields for after-hours use.
And just out of curiosity, if that was full, would I go to the upper parking lot, or?
For football field events and things?
Yeah.
I would say that they probably use the parent visitor parking in this area would be the next area.
Right.
That's closest.
Okay, thank you.
I do have, it strikes me as amazing that we're spending so much time talking about parking. Especially private occupants or private vehicles. But has there been, I personally have experienced the phenomenon that was mentioned by some of our members of the public, and it was also in the prepared documents, about the apparent lack of enforcement of parking laws, rules, codes, whatever, on Evans. Does the school board and/or does the city ever actually tow away cars that are parked next to tow-away zone? Is that ever enforced? It's because it's literally every day. I mean, I've been on that road Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, and it's complete. How should I say it? Avoiding clearly signed.
The south side of the street is signed for no parking. I don't know whose responsibility enforcement of that would be.
It's mostly students, right?
I'm sure that it's students.
Well, so is this a she said, whose job is it to enforce it? Because it is an issue. I mean, it's a safety issue, it's a scofflaw issue. and it's something that affects the residents there, it affects the members and the users of the Sportsman's Club, and I don't quite understand why kids are learning that they can park anywhere they want with no consequences.
Yeah. As noted, the right-of-way ends at this point, so any speeding down through here would have to be city enforced. The reason that I'm not exactly clear who enforces this up here is that this is school district property, but there's an easement that was granted to the city for access to the gun club, sportsman's club, clubhouse, and shooting range. So I'm not really certain of the legal standing of who.
Does the Sportsman's Club, to the best of your knowledge, ever have overflow parking where people park there on Evans? Or is the parking usually for the Sportsman's Club members or users in the parking lot that's provided by you?
Yeah, it's the road is pretty much all used by students parking, and when our parking lot, which does overflow sometimes because we're limited.
Yeah.
It's on weekdays, it's almost impossible for vendors to find parking and sometimes just access to the club is hard because of students parking way out in the middle of the road on the corner, as you know.
Yep. Since we've spent so much time talking about parking, and you've spent so much time planning it, it seems to me that one of the things that we can start with in terms of leadership here is to provide consequences for people that violate the laws and cause problems for everybody else.
Yeah,
and the determination of who's responsible for that. I'll leave it up to the city and the school board, but it's just
I think it's something that sounds like it ought to be addressed.
Okay.
I think another.
Go ahead.
I was going to say another thing that impacts and will continue to impact to a greater degree in the future is the county's ruling that all schools will be located within the urban growth boundary line. And that basically may be an unintended consequence, but that means that every student in the rural area is going to get transported to a school that's inside the urban line. And some percentage of those are going to be parents. And the further out in the rural area they get, the larger the percentage of that parent driving population probably becomes. But that's a given county policy.
Do you know if the school board is you mentioned earlier encouraging the use of the buses. Is there any embryonic plan to try to get to a point where, as is the case with the city of Seattle, where they're looking at actually reducing the number of cars that are brought onto campus on a daily basis?
That gets back to a question that comes up regularly and has come up in this process where there's suggestions that we should have more parking and we should build tiered parking garages, and there's other suggestions that we should reduce the number of parking spaces, and if we reduce the number of parking spaces, then that creates potential pressure on adjacent public streets. If there's parking on a public street, then it's a public street and anybody can park there, and
Oh, all right. Okay. Are there any more? Oh, I do. The parking lot there adjacent that is in the future, could you tell the commission again? I mean, we understand that that's not in the current phasing, but what would be the impact on the trees that are there now if this plan is put in place?
This is an area that was a skeet range. This is not an area of old growth trees. There are trees in there.
Side of it.
And to put parking in here will require the removal of some trees. They're not old growth trees. A lot of them have been sort of stunted by pellets, et cetera. There's more significant trees on the north side, and there's some larger trees sort of back along the north perimeter of the road.
Okay.
There is a tree survey that's included in the documents
that
shows the sizes and locations.
There will be one reader sign to serve both schools?
There will be one reader side to serve both schools. The initial thought was that the middle school sign, well, there was one sign put in for the high school, and PSE came in and put a transformer box in front of it, so you can't really read it. So the original plan, although a sign has to be in a separate permit, was that the reader board would be raised so that the bottom of it is basically at the top of the transformer cabinet, and that the signage would indicate both the middle school and the high school.
Do you have documented evidence that the reader board serves as a net plus in terms of providing information to people that they would not otherwise get, as opposed to a net safety issue when we've taken so much time to talk about people texting while they're driving and talking on cell phones, and reader boards are essentially, look at me, distraction, right at the main intersection.
I don't know that it's been quantified. I'm not exactly sure how you do that. I would hope they'd stop texting to read the reader board.
One way or the other, they're not looking at the road.
Good news now is you can't see it from the
Okay,
side.
all right. It strikes me as kind of reader boards in general as a planned distraction to people that are already distracted. And that location there with that level of traffic is really problematic.
Well, all of the schools have a reader board.
Yeah.
There's only 2 in the city that have electronic reader boards. The rest of them do have manually replaceable reader boards that do provide information about events and activities.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's on a limited scrolling basis, so it's
Okay.
not like some of the signs that.
All right. Commissioners?
Yes, maybe a little subject change and try to maybe understand better some of the design kind of conclusions that you've reached. Maybe these are for David. So a couple questions. One is, you talked a bit about having compatibility with the high school, but then having kind of a standalone presence of the middle school. And I look at the 2 palettes, I guess, and there's so much similarity. I'm struggling to get the independence of the middle school.
And I think to clarify that, that was really at a site planning level. You know, we looked at how close the middle school would be, how much they could feel almost part of one school. And it was really determined that it needed to have, you know, a really distinct front door, distinct arrival point, distinct presence on the site. At the same time, it's meant to look as a cohesive campus, you know, as if you were at a college university campus where there might be, you know, a common material tying the campus together, but you would have different departments, you know, having their own identity.
So a couple more design-related questions. So you've heard you heard staff talk about the blank wall conditions that exist in several locations. I guess the one that struck me initially as I was going through the staff report was just at the entryway and the large kind of blank wall. I know it's got texture to it, but blank wall. And then the last rendering that you showed the trees in there. If you take the trees out, or you take the leaves off the trees, you got a fairly tall, stark wall. So there was a couple of suggestions by staff to do something to add more texture or to put roof covering, some weather protection. And have you thought about those solutions, or have you talked with staff about those? I agree something else needs to happen there, and I'm just trying to understand what the right solution is and how far you've gone in your thinking about that.
Well, and I think what a couple things that we were looking at was one, you know, kind of the presence of a wall and a canopy would certainly change the presence, as the image showed, that Amy showed from below. You wouldn't see the top of the wall. And so there's maybe a scaling factor, but from a distance, I think you still would see quite a bit of the wall above it, and what you would lose is the trees. You know, the reality is there's a limited amount of space there, and if you put a canopy of any significance that was more than just decorative but truly functional, you'd be pushing out, and those trees would go. We see the trees as being, a important and significant element here, and I know that's not specifically considered as a way to mitigate a blank wall, but it is, I think, a reality that this building is surrounded by rows of trees, and they do make an impact. I also, did want to, and we actually brought a sample of the material that we're using on that. It is a highly, there have been discussions around changing patternings, textures of concrete block. This is a cement board panel with a very articulated joint patterns. These aren't joints that will disappear and appear, very blank. And as you can see there, that it's very intentionally looking at a variety of patterns to give some interest to that wall. I also think relative to the high school and some of the walls that are there with the scale of the building, this is actually very comparable and even smaller. We have the gym size of the middle school isn't anything near like the size of the high school. And schools have those types of spaces, which one would expect that often these rules around the articulation, are not necessarily thought of with spaces of this nature. So whether or not a canopy or not would be useful, I mean, that's something certainly, we live in the Pacific Northwest. Is it something that is, with the 900 kids coming out of there, can you ever do a canopy that is adequate? I mean, we have these debates at schools often, so it's not something, I think and even for the high school, there was a thought, could we do a canopy all the way out to 2nd Avenue? Just to understand sort of the usefulness of how much of a canopy is going to really serve its purpose.
Mike, I have a follow-up on your question. For the city, for the staff, do the kinds of I guess embossing, for one of the better architectural term, that we see on the Sunset Interchange and several of the new interchanges on the interstate, where they've got in the concrete, they've got patterns, floral patterns or salmon or something like that. Is that, when it comes to how an architect addresses a large wall, would that be considered by the city to be acceptable mitigation?
Certainly, and in fact, we have suggested that for some of the retaining walls. There's actually one 13-foot high retaining wall that's going to be along what is just south of the faculty parking.
As you said, it could be the logo of the school or in the notes, right?
No.
So that's a different location. Yeah.
There we go. I think
So
Amy,
David,
you're
you want
referring
mine?
to this
Yeah.
along
There's
here.
actually going to be a 13-foot high
Right.
retaining wall there.
Right.
So, however, because the material they're using is the hardy plank, or the what's the official term again for that? The yes, there's the fiber cement
Fiber
board.
cement panel.
You can't really do the embossing on that particular type of material. And if I may, I'd also like to note that before we recommended the covered walkway, we actually did a sketch and we measured whether or not a walkway will actually be accommodated by the space there. And basically, you could provide let's say, even like a 5-foot wide covered walkway.
Covered walkway?
And with the trees, again, the trees will eventually grow taller than the roof line. And in addition to that, you can always consider columnar trees, because those will have more of a, vertical profile, and again, it will mitigate the blank wall.
So this just gives you an example of the strong articulation of those joints that you'll see on that patterning there.
Mike, did you?
On the same, I guess could you show us again? I was a little frustrated by the staff report in terms of the page that showed the blank wall and then the blank wall trees, including this. So to me, it doesn't represent what you're going to see, because it doesn't show the whole wall as it should be. And I think if you can show the elevations
Elevation,
page
sure.
again.
That one, yep.
So so there where you can see the full size of the wall, and if this were a commercial office building project that came to us, and we saw that blank wall on the left of the gym, and I understand it's a gym and everything, but I don't think there's any way the city would allow that to go through, even though it might be articulating concrete and so forth. And I'm not even sure that just a canopy at the bottom would make a difference there. And again, I'm trying to make sure that we don't discriminate against a commercial project versus a public project differently. And blank walls are a big issue. And so I think, and I guess in the same question for Amy and your condition with regard to on page 57, your condition C5, it said on the south elevation, the applicant shall mitigate the blank wall of the gym with the following option, and then there's one or two. And I don't know if you meant with both of the following options or one of the following options. It's page 57 of 63 of the staff report.
Sure. Basically, it's one or the other. So
Just one or the
alternative
other.
one will be to provide a covered walkway, right? Or alternative is to use windows, trellises, wall articulation. So these are examples that are actually cited in the design standards.
Okay, and, okay. I guess I wouldn't agree that just a covered walkway would be enough to break up that big of a blank wall.
And so you're more
In our
than
design
welcome to
standards.
revise the condition, yes.
Thank you.
Mike, did you have something else?
I was just going to respond real quickly too, and I had concerns about whether a canopy that's 8 feet off the ground or 9 feet off the ground is really going to do much to break up the visual size of the wall when you're looking at it from the high school or down below. I think that there's some other vertical elements that probably need to take place, and I think the trees do help. Amy mentioned that there's a 13-foot retaining wall up by the fields to the east of the building, and we've talked with the design team and the landscape architect about putting a wire grid and wire on there to basically make that a green wall. I think that that's along the lines of a trellis, and there may be some continuity in design and landscape features between what goes on the wall and what might happen on the blank wall that we will look at addressing those concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a quick technical question for staff. In the staff report, and I don't remember what page it's on, but you're talking about, and you mentioned in your report or your presentation this evening about the building is over height for what's currently allowed in the zone, and because it's on a property adjacent to a non-conforming condition, which you refer to the high school being non-conforming, that you could also create another non-conforming condition that is replicated on this property. And if I remember, when we did the high school, I think we did an adjustment of standards for the high school, so I don't know if it's technically a non-conforming building. So I'm wondering how you got there. I'm struggling a little bit understanding the technical connection that you're using a non-conforming condition for
Actually,
essentially a scrape and rebuild.
that same clause was used for the high school. And basically what that clause is, and it only applies to community facilities like schools or city buildings. But yeah, it allows you to expand an existing nonconformity if it shows that there's going to be public benefit to do that.
Okay.
And with the high school, similarly, the existing high school that was there before was exceeding the 30-foot height of the single-family suburban zone. So they were expanding a nonconformity then. This is on the same lot. It's again expanding a nonconformity.
Okay. And I also noted that we tried to pull the building back from Evans Street too, to make sure that we didn't have something towering over the top of the neighborhood, so. I want to go to a different topic area, and that's kind of construction impacts and mitigation.
Yep.
Particularly related to what's going on Evans Street. So a couple of things that I noticed. One is, or heard, that construction access is going to be from Evans Street. We're not coming in through the school property as it exists now, so we're going to be bringing in all of the equipment, materials, staff, et cetera. And I'm just wondering, what are we doing to mitigate impacts here?
Right. It actually, I misspoke. The construction access would also be coming in from the Clark entrance, the existing Clark entrance as well. Sorry, I get back to that. So through that current main entry of Clark as
Okay.
well will be additional
As
access.
well, or?
As well, yes.
So both off Evans and the main entry?
Right. Well, not the main entry to Clark. So
Right, main entry to Clark, right, I'm sorry.
So can I, maybe Mr. Crawford can answer this, as far as trying to manage impacts, because obviously the contractor can make choices about where they're going to stage and et cetera. Are there going to be conditions that you're going to put into the contracts here that are going to try to do some work to mitigate some of those potential impacts by directing the contractor to operate a certain way?
One of the real advantages we have on this project is that we went to the Capital Facilities Project Advisory Review Board and were approved to use general contractor construction management for this project. So we have Cornerstone selected, and as a part of the team, they were the architect, not the architects, but they were the contractors for the Issaquah High School, and they're on board. So we have been discussing throughout the course of the development of the project how we're going to stage the work, how they're going to access, and such. So the area that's down in here was going to be created to allow for additional parking and staging. The contractor will be using the area for this, in this area of the parking for construction staging. For the initial construction of the middle school, they'll also be using this area in the front here. So access is intended to be at the Clark entrance into these zones and Evans into the area back around to the east, south, and north of the building.
Can you give us, is it 50/50? I mean, what's, to the folks living on Evans who will be impacted by that, is it going to be most, the heavy equipment comes in one way and the staff, construction staff, private vehicles go in another? What's?
I don't know that it's 50/50. There's probably a little higher percentage of construction activity that's coming in here. The reality is there's probably some traffic that's going to come in at the traffic light in off-peak school hours, in the middle of the day and things like that during the construction of the building here. So it's going to get split up and kind of distributed as between the different areas depending on what type of materials. There's access from the Clark entrance through here to gain access into here. Some of the access into the courtyard area will depend on what phases of the work they're working on, whether they're trying to set steel and need a crane, and whether they're pumping concrete or working inside the building.
Just, probably out of scope for this, but I just, sensitivity to the residential neighborhoods when you're doing a large project like this is important. I don't have any other questions on that.
Any other gentlemen? Before we, go ahead.
I have a couple questions. These, I think, for Amy. On the design standards, it's on page 16. In the second paragraph, I guess it is, under the library's east elevation, in the middle it says, the corner of the school, which consists of the library and the administrative offices on the ground floor, should be designed so that when viewed at the corner, the two, and it looks like it starts another sentence, and I'm trying to figure out what the two, what they would do.
Yeah, so this is now designer speak, right? If you actually look at the fenestration on the main or the south elevation for the library and the administration, and you notice, if you notice the rhythm of the windows, it's not replicated on the when you turn the corner. And so I'm recommending that to reinforce the integrity of the spaces within in the exterior, because that's the same space to be treated the same way on the exterior. Does that make sense?
So what should the sentence read then?
Second sentence down should be.
In other words, it got cut
intersecting exterior walls will be perceived as two sides of the same box.
Oh, so that,
I think we just added a sentence in there or something, and
Yeah, and I apologize. So Lucy just pointed out to me that there's an error in the staff report.
was that one sentence that ended up inserted there? So as Carl
Yeah.
said, it'd be the two intersecting exterior walls would be perceived as two sides. Okay, great.
Exactly,
Got it.
exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
probably the width of the recessed entry will be
Yeah.
extended to match the screen.
Great. Thank you. And then I guess the other question was will the traffic study be completed before the city council takes action on this?
The traffic study, schedule-wise, yes, the traffic study will be completed. As far as whether all the mitigation will be identified, we don't know because we haven't seen what the traffic impact analysis is going to say.
I say, so it would be up to the council to decide if they want to approve this, not knowing
Exactly.
what mitigation might be.
Yeah, and let me expand on Commissioner Morgan's question on that, because I think it was a very relevant point that was brought up by one of the members of the public that spoke. Could staff please explain to the public how it is that the Development Commission can be asked to approve a project when the SEPA hasn't been completed, traffic mitigations have not been identified, and so on? What the process is to provide that information to the City Council when the Development Commission has to make a decision to refer or not without that information. I think it's really important that there be very clear process definition here.
Yeah, as you know, you're making a recommendation to the city council, and they're the ultimate decision makers on the master site plan and the site development permit. And what is unique about this, as we mentioned earlier, is that the school district is the lead on issuing the SEPA determination. And that's a little different because normally, as Amy mentioned, the city's doing it. I think the reason that hasn't been done already, it's kind of a chicken and egg situation where I don't think they wanted to, because of this real condensed time frame that we're all trying to meet in order to meet the time schedule of the school district. I think one of the things they didn't want to do is issue a SEPA determination, and then we have this meeting, and then that they have to either revise the SEPA determination or reissue a new determination. So in order to just do it once, they wanted to wait until after we had this meeting. So that determination should be issued before the city council meeting, though. And at that point, yes, the city council can decide whether the mitigation that's in that determination is adequate for them to make a decision or not.
Any further questions on it?
Yeah, just a basic one. Have you guys thought about energy other than just the regular HVAC and heating and lighting? Have you thought about like solar panels or something that the Green Society is pushing? Or are we so rich that we don't have to think about things like that?
No, we've looked at all kinds of different alternatives, and we've been pretty creative in some things. We've even looked at pretty extensive photovoltaic arrays to the point where the county decided that they'd have to permit it as a power plant and kind of killed the project. As far as individual buildings go, we are looking at high-performance buildings. All of the buildings comply or exceed with the standards set by the Washington Sustainable Schools Protocol. Since about the year 2000, the district's added about 33% to the square footage of building inventory, and our BTU consumption is basically the same as it was at that point in time. So we've been building energy-efficient buildings. There's a lot of strategies that are incorporated in this building. I think David could probably talk about those.
Sure. I mentioned daylighting. Generally with photovoltaics, we're always looking at life cycle cost paybacks, particularly when considering spending taxpayers' money. And photovoltaics really for school districts, unless there are significant incentives, really have a difficult time penciling out as a payback even today. So we're looking, there's a lot better use of those dollars that could be used to buy photovoltaics to put into more efficient systems and envelopes and windows that all have a bigger bang for your buck, to put it in so many words. So we have to start with a very tight building envelope, a completely exterior building insulation, fiberglass windows that, so getting away from the aluminum windows, going to fiberglass, all of which really reduce the heat conductivity through the thermal envelope, which is where we're really trying to reduce our heating and ventilation cost. Very high efficient heating and ventilation equipment through heat recovery systems. We have LED lighting throughout the school. And so from an energy efficiency point of view, we're really pushing kind of the limits of reductions without generating new energy on site, which photovoltaics or some other source would provide.
Yeah. The other thing is, I noticed you don't have elevator in the building.
Oh, we do, yes. Yeah.
Where at?
So the elevator is right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In there.
Yeah.
Are there any other requests for clarification? All right, now the next process that we go through, and we are modifying the process, we're also familiarizing ourselves with this because the Development Commission has not had a lot of meetings lately, so let's be real clear on the process here. This, for the members of the public, this is called a green sheet. And this contains a number of checklist items to determine whether or not the application is compliant with the city codes. So the commission needs to go through this green sheet for a number of different items, and the commission can also suggest conditions, additional conditions that are part of our final vote. So with that said, we will start going through the green sheet. Any commissioners have any reservations, suggestions on the process that we use before we start this? Just that deviate from the way we did green sheets before? Which is to just, now there are, there are a number of pages here, each one of which carries a significant amount of verbiage in each category. So rather than reading these verbatim, each one of them, would it be acceptable to the commission to just identify the category of the vote, and then if any individual commissioner has something that you want to suggest as a condition relevant to that category, you can do it then, and we'll just go through it that way. I don't want to emphasize expedience at the expense of accuracy here, so.
And as I understand it, so Amy has gone through, staff has gone through and already provided our answers to all these, and we're acceptable with their conclusions.
Right.
So I might just suggest that, if I may, rather than looking at the empty green sheets, you might want to look at the staff report where Amy has filled it out, because then you can see where there's been a condition recommended or a comment inserted, and then you know if you have something to add on top of that.
And if I may also add, I actually, in case, for your convenience, I printed extra copies of the conditions, and they're organized to match the green sheet. So you could actually compare the recommended conditions that you're going to do.
So we're talking about page 76 of the green sheet with the recommendations. It's page 76 of 201.
And then a summary of all the conditions are from page 55 to page 64.
Of 201. That starts at 79.
And Amy, was this one more condition?
So that was the one on the screen in response to the new information we
is that a replacement for one of the conditions or an addition? The replacement? Okay, great.
I think she's got an extra. Amy, excuse me, do you have an extra copy, you say?
Anybody else want a copy? I made one for everyone.
Sure.
Why don't you go?
Is it free? That's free.
All right. Okay. So the first subject is building location. Building locations and their, I'll read the primary one. The building locations and their orientation to one another provide for pedestrian/people areas such as courtyards, plazas, pocket parks, etc.
And Mr. Chair, I'd say I'm fine if you just read the headings for these as we go through,
Yeah,
because they
that's-
do tend to get longer.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to do. I'm
No,
gonna-
not even the text, but just the headings.
Just the site layout and overall design concepts, all right?
Yeah, that's
All right,
fine.
conditions of approval.
I'm fine with building location, I'm fine.
Yep.
Acceptable.
Acceptable? Acceptable.
Acceptable.
All right. Energy efficient design?
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
Functional site design?
Acceptable. Acceptable.
All right. Lighting?
Well, since, I think it says the updated lighting plan's not been submitted yet, so it's under a condition. Acceptable.
Acceptable with the conditions.
Right. 5, natural setting views.
Acceptable.
Yep. 6, existing vegetation topography features.
I'm sorry, this should be hillside design and primary views.
I've got natural setting is 5.
C and B.
And 5, and number 6 is the different
Oh,
categories.
5A and 5B.
Yeah. All right, 5A is hillside design.
Yeah, not applicable.
Was there a condition that
And A.
they would take that 13-foot retaining wall and put some architectural detail in it? Is that a condition?
That was a recommendation by the city as a condition, right? Yes.
So so we're accepting that recommendation? That, I guess, it would be acceptable if they would do something with it.
Well, the conditions of approval have been defined by the city with regard to that.
That's,
The way we understand it, when we say acceptable, they're also accepting of proposed.
Right,
Yes.
right, that's correct.
and the condition that you're referring to is coming up in another section on
Yeah.
ground level blank walls.
Okay, so 5A is acceptable.
Not applicable.
Not applicable.
Right. All right. 5B, primary views.
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
6, existing vegetation topography features.
I suggest one change. Under findings of fact that we change it to Development Commission from Design Commission.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mel.
I think that's what we're called.
Gotta be one or the
As
other.
long as you don't cut our pay.
Yeah, that's We're all volunteers for those of you
Free
who don't
cup of
get the
coffee,
job.
right.
All right, 6, existing vegetation.
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
7, historical cultural landmarks, I believe that's NA.
Not applicable.
Right.
7B, design, landscape design and use of plant materials.
It's got a list of the condition.
I've got the number 1 design elements.
There's condition.
Acceptable on one?
With conditions.
Okay.
Acceptable.
Acceptable on 1. Design unity,
Acceptable on 2. And that's,
and 3 is enhanced design.
Acceptable?
pretty acceptable on that too.
Okay, A, all right. B is, oh, that's acceptable all the way through, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we'll go to 4, usable open space design.
Acceptable? Acceptable.
Yep. 5 is plant materials.
Acceptable with the information that we have,
Yeah,
which isn't a lot.
Yeah. Appearance and maintenance,
Acceptable.
noxious or destructive is acceptable.
Acceptable.
And safety is, I believe they've also addressed that. Acceptable? Acceptable. All right, C is design harmony and compatibility.
Can I, excuse me, and back up. There were comments made on dealing with noxious and destructive planting materials.
Yep.
Earlier, and about kind of the selection of materials that are used, ground cover, et cetera, that minimize the possibility of noxious or invasive plant species taking hold. And I think that's a good point, and part of that's maintenance, but part of that's design and installation. So I think that when it doesn't specifically say that, it says don't use those materials. The other thing you want to do is prevent them from taking hold. So I think we should be a little stronger in our statement on this particular section, and maybe just add a condition or statement.
Okay.
And how about, we're gonna add the condition, additional conditions with motions later? We're gonna just put them in now and then vote on them later? How are we gonna?
I just for the sake of clarity, I think it might be easier for us to have the conditions in later and read through them. But I don't have a problem with doing them now and voting on them later en masse when we finish with the
Or
process.
would you like staff to be drafting something while you're going through the rest of this, and then you can come back and look at it at the end?
Certainly, that would be helpful. And so roughly wanted to say something to the effect of provide ground cover and landscape plantings of adequate depth and density, minimize the growth of noxious or invasive species.
For all ground disturbing.
For all yes, for all disturbed areas. So that we're coming in and ensuring that we don't leave bare ground exposed and walk away.
Right.
Lucy, did you get enough? Want to do that again?
If you could go to if you remember what you said, it would be great if you repeated it.
Provide ground cover and landscape plantings of adequate depth and density. Minimize growth of noxious or invasive species.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think we can eliminate it, but we can try.
Oh my. Okay. The next category is design harmony and compatibility. Category number 1 is accessory structures.
Acceptable.
Acceptable. So, all right, so that isn't acceptable. Category 2 is building materials and components.
Acceptable.
Durability and maintenance.
Acceptable.
Compatibility?
Acceptable.
No.
Acceptable.
I believe so.
Acceptable.
It's acceptable.
I'm looking now at, under compatibility, I'm looking at noise, and there's a flat statement there that noise impacts from school buses using Evans Street in the morning and afternoon should be negligible. Single-family residences turn their backs on Evans Street, one of the main vehicular routes to access the middle school. And then there's another section of the same topic. The Issaquah Sportsman's Club gunfire noise can often be heard during school hours, however, the classroom wing is buffered. So I personally, I hope that's right. But I think the wording of it, if in fact the wording is carried through, if it is negligible, it's acceptable, but that's, you know, I don't know of any documented evidence of decibel rates or anything like that that would give us factual basis for determining whether it's acceptable or not. So, my recommendation is we go with it, but sure hope that there is accuracy in that.
Yeah, I get your point, though. I mean, they tried to design the building in a way to mitigate the impact on quiet areas in it, like the classrooms. But unless the frequency of the shots going off at the Sportsman's Club is in tune with the band, beat of the band, I don't know.
Well, I will point out one other thing too. There was some discussion on the part of the Sportsman's Club representative, and also in the documentation that staff provided, that the Sportsman's Club, which I use, by the way, is in the process, a continuing process of doing noise mitigation efforts there. I would point out that there are some pretty significant studies that I'm aware of just from reading popular media that noise walls, particularly when they've been constructed alongside interstates, usually as a result of litigation, to mitigate the noise impact on properties next to interstates and high traffic volumes, actually have the effect of mitigating the impact of the noise in the immediate areas. But if the source of the noise is below any other occupied areas, the walls in question actually just deflect the noise upward. So people who live on Tiger and Squawk Mountain, if there are noise walls built there, will hear more of the gun range, which I do all day long, and it's fine with me. But we shouldn't be under any illusions about where the noise goes when it's redirected by a noise wall. Okay. Lighting.
It's acceptable. I thought we were doing lighting.
Okay. Design, category 4, design components. Colors.
Acceptable.
Finding of fact. Okay. C, color, C is facade. Findings of fact.
Modulation is
Yeah,
D.
modulation.
This one? Oh, I did. I'm sorry. Modulation.
That's acceptable.
With the
Sort
staff
of,
findings of
it'll
fact.
come up again, I guess, in blank walls, so.
Yep. C is facade. Staff findings of fact are included.
Same as, we're going to get to the facade,
Yeah.
or the
And then
wall facade
Yep.
condition here in a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's acceptable based on.
Based on getting to
Just
it later.
moving on.
Yeah. All right, D, ground level. Staff findings of fact.
I'm going to propose that we add some language there. On the condition C5.
Right.
Maybe it's as simple as saying, building design shall incorporate architectural treatments acceptable or approved by the city council to mitigate the blank walls on all facades. I don't think we can come up with, during our hearing, I don't think we're going to come up with something that we think is the right thing to do I know it's something they're working on, but I'd rather that when city council approves this, that they're also approving the changes to those walls and not just leaving that open. Does that make sense?
Yes,
So,
it does to me.
I'm sorry, were you suggesting added language in the italicized part of C5?
Yes.
And I missed where that
So
was.
let's see if it works this way. The building design shall incorporate architectural treatments approved by the city council, mitigate the blank walls on all facades.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, good.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, going through lots of findings of fact here.
So can I just comment on that? We're going to talk about, and just, it's interesting to call out a single element of a building to have a city council approve of the design of an element of a building. We're going to rely some on staff. I think we need to get some direction on that. I'm just going to put the council in a little bit of an awkward spot, possibly. That condition is something they'll deal with. If we want to punt it to the council, and they're going to be the final decision maker on an architectural element of a building, then that's what we're asking them to do.
Well, I guess my feeling is if we had time to have them come up with a different design and come back to us, and we said, yes, we think that's fine, we'll recommend approval, in the interest of time.
How about as recommended by the staff and approved by the council?
Well, I'm assuming it'll be recommended by staff.
Yeah.
Shall incorporate.
That's fine.
The bind we find ourselves in, I believe, is that we have a major issue that comes up with everything that the Development Commission, almost every application that the Development Commission reviews, which is blank walls and how to address them. And yet we don't, we have findings of fact that make a couple of recommendations, but we're not in a position to say,
Well,
Yes or no?
partly it's a kind of a change in process. We typically had an opportunity in the early design development to
Right.
weigh in, and then they came back after they had done more
Right.
detailed design work, architectural work, and then we would say whether you hit the mark or not. And now this is pretty much one shot and pass it on to the council. So they're the decision makers, so I'm ask them to.
well, Mel, Commissioner, would you see this as again, in the recognition of what Commissioner Brennan just mentioned, which is we're morphing into a new process. Would you see this as a precedent setting thing that we do with this, and then we have the option of doing it subsequent commission meetings when we have to come to a final decision on recommending or recommending with conditions or not recommending? But if there's an area that the commission doesn't feel we have sufficient information to make a decision at that point, we say, this is ultimately up to the city council, but we weren't able to address this aspect of it.
Yeah, because I think when we've done a level, I guess it would be, say, a level 3 review where we're the decision maker, sometimes in the past we've said, we'll do it, we'll leave it to a decision of the chair that's acceptable to the chair at a later time, or acceptable to staff. But in this case, I feel like, not that I don't trust staff, but I think it's a big enough issue that when the city council actually votes on this, it should be pointed out, they should have this information in front of them, not just a condition that says you should do something, which really leaves it up to staff.
Yeah, the condition.
They should have it ready to go for the council to approve.
So could I just point out, though, that this isn't the final plan for the building? So my one concern is that we're putting, the applicant has presented elevations, which both staff and the commission have identified concerns with. There is specific solutions that are, authority that were granted by the code in dealing with blank walls. We've identified that they have to do that. And so my two concerns, one is that I don't know whether we'll have final elevations by the time we go to council, which is what I'm hearing you're suggesting. We may we may be able to revise them. I just don't know that you would have a final one that would not, it's not going to be at the point where you used to see it, where it was ready to be, the building permit was basically ready for structural review. So I'm just concerned that this isn't the final evolution of the design development. We don't have construction drawings, for instance.
Right, but Lucy, are you saying that the city council might not have it either by the time they have to vote on this?
Or think about 7th and Gilman. I mean, you saw a final concept for that where you had concerns and we had authority. We wrote conditions that identified what kinds of additional treatments and actions were required, but you weren't seeing the final elevations.
No, we weren't.
Right.
But the city council, what I
You were
think
the
I just heard-
decision maker on that
Right,
one, for instance.
But in this level of hearing, I think well, I don't want to speak for you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Morgan, but
Better than I do.
it seems to, I'm concerned about transparency of process here. And I really am concerned about that. And what I want to avoid is a misunderstanding about how something as critical as a blank wall that is cited specifically in our responsibilities and your responsibilities can get that far down the process without a definition that the public can say, well, the Development Commission at this level of review, somebody that follows it said, okay, that's it, and that's what ended up. Or the Development Commission couldn't do that because they didn't have, the information they needed at that time under the new process. So therefore, something that important has to be, or should be, approved. If it's going to the city council should know that the Development Commission couldn't make a recommendation, basically couldn't make a recommendation on that.
So you want to,
I'm just saying that it might be precedent setting. Commissioner Brennan's concern is about us starting to cherry pick things out that we say, no, we're going to leave this up to the city council. And I agree with that. I mean, I don't think we should do that. But I also am kind of struggling around here about how we go from the old process where we did see things twice to this process. And the things that we don't have information on now that we used to have before we took the final vote. Frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable with it.
Well, and I think part of it would be, since we're just making a recommendation to them anyway, they don't have to follow, they could just say, I guess, they could just change it to say, hey, we're fine with staff.
And we certainly have precedent for that.
well, and that's a good point,
Yeah.
Mel, because potentially we could have concept sketches that incorporate these things, and they may say, we still want you to keep working on this, but this is closer, or these are
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
Yeah, and we're happy with it, or.
Okay.
I think largely, I just wanted to be more called out. That they took a good look at this and.
Well, and if possible, to have revised elevations that they're actually
Yeah,
seeing.
yeah.
Okay,
That'd be great.
okay.
Okay.
So the wording, I'm sorry, Commissioner Brennan?
So just another comment, this is a good discussion, and we're going to be here forever tonight. But the point here is what level of detail is being approved, and how specific is that in the way of the future construction? Meaning, if we're saying, well, it's a concept, and the colors, the elevations, everything's going to change maybe, so what's the point? So at some point you have to say, the elevation, it needs to be this exactly or close to it, or it's typical to what will end up being constructed. Otherwise, either at our level or at the council level, whoever the decision maker is, you got to be clear about what is the direction that's being provided in the approval, and what are the parameters that they need to operate within. If you don't do that, it's where's the value? So
Well, and I think you're bringing up a really important point, which is there's definitely a line between refining what has been before the commission, and in this case, the council, and what is such a significant change that it needs to come back to the commission. And there is absolutely a line between those two.
And I think this is a case where if we were the decision maker, I think I would have voted, no, you have to come back with an actual plan showing us what it's going to look like. And I think that's why I point out, if I were the council, I'd want to say I feel good enough, have enough information to approve it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Let's give it a
Mr.
try.
Morgan, do you want to reread your wording of C5?
Lucy, do you want to read what she had there?
So can I make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
How about if it said, "The building design shall incorporate architectural treatments revised and presented to the council to mitigate the blank walls on the facade." So instead of approved by the council, the applicant's revising them and presenting them to the council. And if they're approving it, then it's fine. And if it's not approved, then we're going back to the drawing boards.
How about if we say acceptable to the city council?
Yes.
That'd work?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So I'll keep drafting
Yeah,
here. so you have this.
Revised and acceptable?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Category 6. Wait, we've gone through,
On 6.
yeah, we're on 6 now. Transition.
You skip over signage?
I don't,
Yeah,
well,
you haven't covered signage.
and I'm looking at
Yeah, where do we have to sign?
If 5's acceptable with conditions?
I agree. Acceptable.
I agree.
Just had to figure out where it was.
It's 5964 is the,
Yeah.
okay. That goes all the way down through, so now we're on transition. Okay.
Acceptable?
Yep.
Acceptable with the conditions,
7, projects with multiple structures.
I would say acceptable, not just not applicable. Since I think
Yeah, because there are multiple, there are, yeah. All right, so acceptable. D is non-motorized and vehicular areas.
acceptable?
Yeah.
Acceptable.
Yep.
It's acceptable.
2, circulation trail access.
Yeah, acceptable.
Acceptable?
Okay. Design parking areas.
Spent a lot of time talking about this.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that they probably spent way more time than we did talking about it too, so,
I'm
Right.
sure they did.
yeah.
I think it's acceptable with the conditions they've got down here.
It's acceptable.
All right, acceptable. Public access adjacent to site.
Challenge with this was the level of detail provided for the trail and the configuration, the grade changes that are occurring as it moves adjacent to the site and then by the Sportsman's Club was hard to get from the plans.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some of this we're just going to have to rely on staff's work as they continue to find the design with the architect. There's so many questions and concerns about this that I just, I don't know that it's acceptable or
Well,
not.
well, this is where we are in this, as this new process, that this is a continuing challenge for staff and for commission.
I've got one suggestion here. For condition D9, what I would suggest is that on the second line where it says the trail connecting the eastern leg of the Rainier Trail shall be reviewed, I would say reviewed and approved by the City of Issaquah Parks and Rec Department.
Okay.
I feel comfortable if.
Yeah, let the experts do it.
Let them.
I agree.
Then the next sentence is the final approval of this design shall be required prior to posting. Who's doing the final approval? The city council or the Parks and Recreation Department?
It would be the Parks and
The Parks
Recreation.
and Rec, yeah.
Yeah, based on the amendment that Commissioner Morgan just made. Reviewed and approved by the City of Issaquah Parks and Recreation Department. Final approval of trail design shall be required.
Then I'd get rid of the final approval and just say the approval. This trail design should be required prior to posting landscape performance bond for the project.
Well,
Then we're talking about two different finals maybe. At least maybe I'm getting into the weeds.
yeah, I think what we're talking about here is making this gel. And the city Parks and Recreation Department would have approval as part of the process that goes up to the city council, the way Commissioner Morgan has. So ultimately, it's the city council that's going to be approving, but for when it comes to the trail, the final location and paving material, it would be subject to the Parks and Recreation Department to say okay or not yet.
And I guess that last sentence on D9, it says final approval of this trail design shall be required prior to posting the bonds. I mean, you've got to get the parks approval before you go get the bond. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's kind of catch-22 there because they want the bond before they approve it, but, so we'll see.
It just shall be reviewed and approved by.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, I hate to do this, but just for clarification, actually, that particular condition is the one that we're replacing with
Oh.
a more,
With this?
yes.
Oh, okay.
But this new condition doesn't mention anything about this, the Parks Department reviewing and approving. So if you feel more comfortable doing that, we can, again, revise the proposal to include that.
Wait, you're saying
So
that-
D9,
Yeah,
right?
D9, right? This is what you just brought in, all right? And it says shall be reviewed and approved by the city.
You just added that though.
Yeah, so we changed it instead of the parks.
You see up here where I'm moving it? That's the revised one. And so I think what you're saying is you want to say final approval.
Of
Of
this
the
design.
design by the city parks and
Yep.
recreation department.
Yeah.
Or final approval.
Okay.
Of the trail design.
It's really lovely watching sausage being made.
Final approval of trail design by the city.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, okay?
Yes. Thank you, Lucy.
It doesn't talk about bonds now,
Okay,
performance bonds.
6. Wait a minute.
Oh.
No. I'm now going back and look
Public
at findings of
access
fact.
within the
Public
site.
access. Adjacent to site.
So we just.
That's what we
Wait,
just did.
we're on
And we should be
6.
on,
On number 5, public access within site.
with,
Within site, okay, I'm not seeing what the heck that is.
no conditions on that. Not really applicable.
Not applicable? Okay. 6 is trail and non-motorized facility design.
Acceptable?
You good with that?
Acceptable.
Okay. 7, transition of design element and amenities.
Acceptable?
Acceptable.
Acceptable.
E, service and storage areas. 1, screening, service yards, and outdoor storage.
Acceptable.
2, screening mechanical equipment.
Acceptable.
Screening display areas. That's NA.
Unapplicable.
That's NA, yeah. Okay. I'm assuming, and this is out of order, but and I believe it is addressed, but I just want to make sure that I know that the fire department has already looked at all these access plans and determined that their largest vehicles can get in there at peak travel times when it's full of buses and private vehicles. So we never have a problem with that.
So,
You know, I'm sorry, this is way out of line, but if we're going to have somebody addressing an issue like that, could you come up to the mic and just identify yourself or?
We have been working with the fire department, fire marshal, and they have reviewed plans and will continue to that process as we move through the rest of the permit.
Okay.
and I would like to add that this project is very complicated because of the phasing. So we have included a condition that says that fire access will be provided at all times during construction and after.
Okay. Right. All right.
Mr. Chair, this isn't a condition, but it's just a recommendation to staff, I guess, is I think it would be very helpful in the presentation to City Council to provide before and after views from street levels and within the project itself to show, like from Evans, here's a street seen now, here's what the street scene would look like. I know you architects are really good at providing those things, so I think that'd be very helpful to the councils. Especially those things like the retaining walls and.
We'll keep that in mind. Make a list of.
Yumi, do you know about when this is going to come to council? I mean, just on as complicated as this is, how long it will be before the council gets to see this?
So the final decision is March 18th.
March 18th?
Or 13th, or whatever that Monday is. So it's, we're sending the agenda bill for tomorrow.
I guess we didn't
Wednesday.
include it on the.
It goes to the council with the first Monday of March. Then 2 days later, or 3 days later, it's at Land and Shore. And we're still determining whether it goes to Land and Shore, and then it would go back on the 18th for full council decision.
I said March 12th. They moved the Land and Shore meeting.
All right.
Care for a motion?
Yes, sir. Does anybody care to make the motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Development Commission recommend the approval of the master site plan and the site development permit to the City Council. The Issaquah Middle School project file numbers MSP 14-00002 and SDP 14-00001 as described and evaluated in the staff report dated February 18th, 2015, and project drawings revised on February 4th, 2015, received on February 11th, 2015, and subject to the conditions therein and as amended tonight.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
So we realized, and I had written it in, but I didn't get it typed in. We didn't list, we need to just add.
Number of conditions or exhibits? Exhibits 1 through 13?
Oops.
Okay, we got, all right. All right.
Vote on this one.
So, that doesn't change the nature of the motion at all. So is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Development Commission direct the Development Services Department to prepare findings of fact and conclusions for review and approval by the Development Commission Chairman, affirming the Development Commission's decision to recommend approval of the Issaquah Middle School project, file numbers MSP 14-00002 and SDP 14-00001, subject to the 13 conditions listed, no, that's not right. Sorry, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated February 18, 2015, and project drawings received February 11, 2015, and subject to the conditions therein and as amended tonight. And if we need to add the language about exhibits, we can too.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? I would simply say my role to sign this, I will be out of state, close to this date, so.
Are you around tomorrow?
We are prepared to have this for you tomorrow.
Okay, yes, all right, yeah, I will be here tomorrow.
They
Super.
mean after midnight. They're coming to your house.
The overtime clause. All right, so we have a motion and a second and no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And I would like very much to thank the members of the public specifically, members of the public who came. We're always, I speak for the entire commission, we're always encouraged by members of the public that show up, that make presentations, that stay through, that ask questions, because, as I say, every meeting, you're what it's all about. We really need the public to participate and understand what's going on things this big. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to specifically thank Amy for all her hard work on this project. Amy, you did a wonderful job on this and a great presentation, and to the school district and the architect and everybody else that worked on this, but especially Amy for first project, a big one. Thank you very much.
Yep, look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Therefore, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
I just wanted to mention, we will have a meeting on March.
I still like yellow ball, especially for
There will be a meeting
Luby,
first Wednesday of March.
Seattle.